I am Clara and I am 28 years old. I discovered my brothers were making double my salary for doing half the work, and when I confronted HR about it, my father looked me dead in the eye and said, "They are men, and you only spend money." So I quit on the spot and he actually laughed. "Who is going to hire you?" he asked. "Well, Dad, turns out I did not need anyone to hire me." Where are you watching from today? Drop your location in the comments below and hit that like and subscribe button if you have ever felt completely undervalued by your own family. You will definitely want to stick around for what happened next. Let me back up and tell you how I got to that moment. Because the betrayal did not start in that conference room. It started years earlier, in small cuts I barely noticed until I was bleeding out on the floor of my father's office, holding proof of everything I had refused to see. Growing up in the Mitchell family meant understanding that competence spoke louder than any label. At least that was what I believed. Our family business, Mitchell and Associates, specialized in commercial property management. Dad built it from nothing, or so he always said. And I grew up thinking I would be part of that legacy. I thought merit mattered in this family. I thought blood meant loyalty. I was wrong on both counts. I started working there right after college, eager to prove myself. While my brothers Jake and Ryan coasted through their business degrees with gentlemen's C's and fraternity connections, I graduated summa cum laude with a degree in business administration and a minor in real estate finance. I thought my credentials would speak for themselves. How charmingly naive of me. From day one, I threw myself into everything. Crisis management? That was Clara's department. Difficult clients? Send Clara? Impossible deadlines? Clara will figure it out. I became the company's unofficial firefighter, constantly putting out blazes that my brothers somehow never seemed to notice existed. I was the one who answered the phone at 2 a.m. when a pipe burst in the Morrison building. I was the one who spent weekends reviewing contracts that needed to be filed Monday morning. I was the one who made sure the company actually ran while everyone else collected their paychecks. Jake is 30 years old. He spent most of his time networking at expensive lunches that produced questionable results. Always had a golf club in his car and a reservation at the steakhouse. Dad called it relationship building. I called it an extended vacation funded by the clients I was managing. Ryan is 26. He had a gift for showing up late and leaving early while still managing to take credit for projects I completed. Once, he submitted my entire quarterly report with his name on the cover. Dad praised his initiative. I said nothing. That was my first mistake. There would be many more. But hey, they had that magical Y chromosome working in their favor. And I had 6 years of swallowed words and silent resentments building up inside me like a pressure cooker waiting to explode. One day, about 2 months before everything fell apart, I walked past Ryan's office and heard him on the phone. His door was slightly open and his voice carried into the hallway. "Do not worry," he said, laughing at something the other person said. "She will never find out." Dad made sure of that. I assumed he was talking about a client issue. Some deal that had gone sideways, some mistake that needed covering up. It would not have been the first time. I kept walking. I had fires to put out, reports to file, a company to run while my brothers played executive. I was wrong about that phone call, so very wrong. But I would not understand what Ryan really meant until much later. Until I was standing in my father's office with my heart shattered and my eyes finally open. I had been there 6 years when Linda from accounting accidentally left a payroll report on the copy machine. I was not snooping. I was never snooping. I was just making copies of client contracts for the Morrison Industries file, the account that represented 23% of our annual revenue, the account I had saved from disaster 4 times in the past year alone. But there it was, a single sheet of paper sitting on the glass, still warm from the printer. Linda's coffee cup sat beside the machine, steam rising. She had just stepped away. She would be back any moment. I had maybe 30 seconds, maybe less. I should have walked away, should have pretended I never saw it, should have kept being the good daughter who never asked uncomfortable questions. But something made me look. Something made me read those numbers that would change everything. Jake Mitchell, annual salary $95,000. Ryan Mitchell, annual salary $88,000. Clara Mitchell, annual salary $42,000. I read it 3 times, then a 4th. The numbers did not change. They just sat there on the page, black ink on white paper, telling a truth my family had hidden for 6 years. $42,000 for managing 60% of the company's revenue, for handling Morrison Industries, Blackstone Properties, and the entire downtown portfolio combined, for being the one they called at 2 a.m. and the one who stayed until midnight, and the one who made everything work while my brothers collected nearly double my salary for half my effort. The betrayal hit me like a physical blow. I actually had to grab the edge of the copier to keep from falling. Not just because of the money, though, that stung enough to take my breath away. It was the realization that my own family had been systematically undervaluing me for 6 years. Every compliment Dad gave about my work ethic, every acknowledgement of my contributions, every pat on the back and well done Clara had been hollow words, performance, theater, a way to keep me working hard while my brothers collected paychecks that reflected their true worth in his eyes. I thought about my 25th birthday. Dad had given me a card that said, "To our hardest worker." I had framed it. It still sat on my desk in my tiny office at the end of the hall. The office without windows. The office they gave to interns before they gave it to me. Now I understood what that card really meant. To the one we can underpay because she will never leave. To the one too loyal to ask questions. To the one who will work twice as hard for half the reward because she actually believes we see her as family. I put the paper back exactly where I found it, walked back to my windowless office, sat down at my desk and stared at that framed birthday card for a very long time. I spent the rest of that day in a fog, mechanically completing my tasks, smiling at coworkers, answering emails, pretending everything was fine when everything was broken. My mind kept circling back to the same questions. How long had this been going on? Had it been like this from the very beginning? Did everyone know? Was I the only one who had been foolish enough to believe in fairness? And Linda, had she left that report by accident? Or had she wanted me to find it? The timing was too perfect, the placement too convenient. But why would she risk her job to show me something my family had worked so hard to hide? I did not have answers, only questions, and a growing certainty that I could not let this continue. That evening, something unusual happened. Dad stopped by my desk on his way out. He never did that. In 6 years of working there, I could count on one hand the number of times he had visited my office. "Working late again, sweetheart?" He smiled the way he always smiled, warm, paternal. Proud. That smile looked different now, like a mask I was seeing for the first time. "That is my girl. Don't know what we would do without you." He patted my shoulder and left. His cologne lingered in the air long after he was gone. I sat there wondering if he had seen me at the copy machine, wondering if Linda had told him, wondering if this visit was coincidence or calculation. With my father, I was beginning to realize nothing was ever coincidence. By the time I drove home that night, I had made my decision. This was not going to continue. I deserved an explanation. I deserved answers. And I deserved to be treated like the professional I had proven myself to be for 6 years. I would request a meeting with HR. I would present my case calmly and professionally. I would lay out the facts and let the numbers speak for themselves. Surely this could all be resolved like adults. Surely my family valued fairness and would correct this obvious oversight once it was brought to their attention. I spent the next 3 days preparing like I was defending my dissertation, performance reviews from 6 consecutive years, client retention statistics showing 94% under my management versus 71% under my brothers, revenue breakdowns proving I handled 60% of the company's income, a detailed comparison of responsibilities, hours worked, and results delivered. Numbers do not lie, I told myself. When they see the evidence, they will have to make this right. I was still so naive, still so desperate to believe that the family I loved would choose fairness over convenience, that the father I admired would choose justice over prejudice. But when I walked into that HR meeting 3 days later, I realized something that changed everything. The meeting was not about giving me answers. It was about making sure I never asked questions again. And my father was waiting inside. Thursday morning arrived with a knot in my stomach that no amount of coffee could untangle. I got to the office an hour early, my prepared documentation sitting in a leather folder on the passenger seat. Mom had given me that folder when I graduated college, said every professional woman needed something elegant to carry her accomplishments in. I had never used it for anything this important, never thought I would need to prove my worth to my own family. My hands were steady as I walked through the parking garage. My heart was not. I had rehearsed what I would say a dozen times in front of my bathroom mirror the night before. Calm, professional, data-driven. I would not be emotional. I would not raise my voice or let them see how much this hurt. I would let the numbers speak for themselves, and the numbers were devastating. The hallway to HR felt longer than usual that morning. Sandra's office was at the end, past the break room where Jake was already making his second espresso of the morning. He did not look up as I passed. Neither did the receptionist. Neither did anyone. Everyone seemed very interested in their computer screens as I walked by. Too interested. The kind of interested that meant they already knew where I was going, and maybe why. Word traveled fast in this company. Secrets traveled faster. And I was beginning to understand that my salary had never been a secret to anyone except me. Sandra Martinez had worked for the Mitchell family for 15 years. I had always liked her. She was fair, professional, had a reputation for handling sensitive issues with discretion and grace. She had helped me navigate my first performance review, had quietly warned me when office politics were getting complicated. I trusted her as much as I trusted anyone in that building. But today, something was different. She looked uncomfortable from the moment I sat down in the chair across from her desk. Her usual warm smile was strained. Her eyes kept flickering toward the window that looked out onto the executive suite, toward my father's office. "Clara, I understand you have concerns about your compensation," she began carefully. Her voice had that measured quality people use when they have been coached on what to say. Concerns is putting it mildly. I slid my leather folder across her desk and opened it to the first page. I would like to understand the criteria being used for salary determination. Because based on performance metrics, there seems to be a significant discrepancy. She barely glanced at my materials. Maybe 2 seconds, maybe less. Her eyes touched the papers like they were hot, then pulled away. Like she already knew what was in them. Like someone had already briefed her on exactly what I might bring to this meeting. "Clara, I think this conversation would be better had with your father directly." She was already reaching for her phone before I could respond, not asking if I wanted to escalate, not offering alternatives or explanations or even the pretense of a fair hearing. Just calling Dad. Like this had been the plan all along. Like my carefully prepared presentation was nothing more than a formality before the real meeting began. Let me see if he is available. He was available. Of course he was. Robert Mitchell was always available when there was a narrative to control, a daughter to manage, an inconvenient truth to bury. 5 minutes later, I was being escorted to my father's office. The folder felt heavier in my hands with every step. Dad's office had always been designed to intimidate. That was the point. The massive oak desk that cost more than my annual salary. The leather chair that sat 6 inches higher than the guest chairs, forcing everyone who sat across from him to look up like a child seeking approval. The framed photos covering the walls, him shaking hands with mayors, senators, real estate moguls. A visual resume of power and connections. And one photo of the family, taken 15 years ago. Before Mom got sick. Before everything changed. Before I understood that the man smiling in that photograph was not the man sitting behind this desk. I noticed something I had never seen before. Mom's photo, the one that used to sit on the corner of his desk where he could see it every day, was gone. In its place was a new frame. Dad with Jake and Ryan at some golf tournament. All 3 of them holding trophies and grinning like they had conquered the world. I was not in it. I wondered when the switch happened. I wondered if I had ever really been in any of the frames that mattered. Sandra sat beside me, notepad ready, pen poised, writing nothing. She was here as a witness, I realized, not as an advocate, not as a neutral party, as proof that proper procedure had been followed when they dismissed my concerns. Dad flipped through my carefully prepared charts with the expression he used to review grocery lists. Mildly interested, slightly impatient, already certain of the outcome. Clara, honey. He leaned back in his chair and the leather creaked like a sigh. I appreciate your initiative here, but I am not sure you understand how business compensation works. The honey did it. That single word, spoken in that patronizing tone he used when he thought I was being emotional. Like I was a child asking why the sky is blue. Like 6 years of dedicated work and a folder full of irrefutable evidence deserved nothing more than condescension and a pet name. Enlighten me, I said. My voice was steady. I was proud of that. He leaned back further, settling into the posture of a man about to deliver wisdom to someone too simple to understand it. Your brothers have different responsibilities, different pressures. Jake handles our major institutional clients. Ryan manages our development projects. Those roles carry more liability, more complexity. Dad, I handle Morrison Industries, Blackstone Properties, and the entire downtown portfolio. Combined, they represent 60% of our revenue. His jaw tightened. Just slightly, just enough for me to notice. I was disrupting his narrative, forcing him off the script he had prepared. Yes, but... And last month, I continued, when Blackstone threatened to pull their contract over the heating system failures, who spent 3 straight days coordinating with contractors and city inspectors to resolve it? Who kept them from walking away and taking 11% of our annual revenue with them? His eyes flickered to Sandra. Just for a moment. A glance that said everything. I told you she would do this. I told you she would not just accept it. Sandra's pen stopped moving entirely. She stared at her notepad like the secrets of the universe were written there. I understood then. This was not a meeting. It was not a negotiation or a discussion, or even a genuine attempt to address my concerns. This was a containment strategy. They had discussed me, prepared for me, decided how to handle me before I ever walked through that door. The silence stretched between us. My father put down my documentation and looked at me directly. And then he said the words that would echo in my mind for years to come. The words that shattered every illusion I had ever held about my family, about my place in it, about my worth. They are men, Clara. You only spend money. Have you ever had a moment where time stops? Where words hit you so hard that reality shifts around you, rearranging itself into a shape you no longer recognize? Where the ground you have been standing on your entire life suddenly reveals itself to be nothing but air? This was mine. 6 years of dedication, of excellence, of loyalty so complete I had sacrificed relationships, weekends, holidays, any semblance of a personal life, reduced to my gender and some twisted perception of my worth. Excuse me? I managed to say the words, but they came from somewhere far away, from the part of me that was still standing while the rest of me collapsed. Men have families to support, Dad continued, like he was explaining something obvious to a slow student. They need career growth, financial stability. You will probably get married, have kids, want to stay home eventually. It does not make sense to invest the same resources in someone who is temporary. Temporary? The word hit me like a slap. I thought about all the holidays I had worked so my brothers could be with their girlfriends, the vacations I had skipped because someone needed to stay behind and keep things running, the apartment I still rented because I had been saving to buy something near the office, to make my commute shorter, to give even more of myself to a company that saw me as temporary. 6 years. And I was temporary. I looked at my father, really looked at him, not as my dad, not as my mentor, not as the man who had taught me to ride a bike and helped me with calculus homework and walked me to my first day of kindergarten, but as exactly what he was, A man who had built his success by making others smaller, who had used me for 6 years and paid me less than half what he paid the sons who could barely show up on time, who looked at his own daughter and saw nothing but an expense to be minimized until she could be eliminated entirely. I had been small for him long enough. I stood up slowly. My legs were somehow steady despite feeling like my entire world was crumbling. But my voice, when it came out, surprised even me. It was calm, clear, certain. I see. Now, Clara, do not get emotional about this. He waved his hand dismissively. Business is business. Emotional. I almost laughed, of course. Because recognizing blatant discrimination is just me being emotional. Because expecting equal pay for superior work is just me being difficult. Because finally seeing the truth after 6 years of willful blindness is just me being hysterical. You are right, Dad. Business is business. I reached into my purse and pulled out my company credit card, my office keys, my parking pass, the accumulated artifacts of 6 years of servitude to a family that had never seen me as anything more than cheap labor. I placed each item on his desk with deliberate care, like I was laying down cards in a game I had finally decided to stop playing, like I was setting down a weight I had carried so long I had forgotten it was crushing me. Consider this my 2 weeks' notice. The color drained from his face. This was not in his script. This was not how the containment strategy was supposed to end. The daughter was supposed to be upset but manageable, disappointed but compliant. She was supposed to accept the explanation and go back to her windowless office and keep making them money for half the cost. Clara, let us not be hasty. 2 weeks, professional courtesy, since family clearly means something different to each of us. I turned to leave. My hand was on the doorknob when his voice stopped me. And there it was. The question that revealed exactly who he had always been. The question that proved I had never known him at all. Who is going to hire you, Clara? Really? I turned back, looked at him one last time. The man I had loved. The man I had trusted. The man I had given 6 years of my life trying to impress. You know what, Dad? That is the wrong question. His eyebrows raised, expectant, smug, absolutely certain I would crumble, that I would realize my mistake and come crawling back, that I would remember my place. The right question is who is going to save this company when I am gone? I walked out without waiting for his response, did not go back to my desk, did not collect my things, did not say goodbye to anyone. I walked straight to the elevator, down to the parking garage, and sat in my car for 45 minutes without turning on the engine. My phone started buzzing almost immediately. Jake, then Ryan, then Dad again. I watched the notifications pile up like evidence of a crime scene. I did not answer. I was not ready for their words yet, their explanations, their attempts to manage me back into my proper place. I had no job, no plan, no backup. Savings that might last 4 months if I was careful. I had just walked away from the only career I had ever known, the only company I had ever worked for, the only family I had ever had, and I had absolutely no idea what came next. I was about to start the car when I noticed something I had missed before, a voicemail from 3 days ago, from a number I did not recognize. In the chaos of preparing my presentation, I had ignored it, assumed it was a telemarketer or a wrong number. The message was only 12 seconds long, but those 12 seconds would change everything. Miss Mitchell, this is Tom Reeves. I am a headhunter specializing in commercial real estate. I have been watching your work for some time, and I think we should talk. You see, I know something about your family's company that you do not, and I think you deserve to know it too. He had called 3 days ago, before I found the payroll report, before I knew anything was wrong, almost like he knew what was coming, almost like someone had tipped him off. I saved the message, started my car, and drove toward a future I could not yet imagine, carrying questions I did not yet know how to ask. What did Tom Reeves know about my family, and why had he called me before everything fell apart? I sat in my car for another 10 minutes after listening to the voicemail, played it again, then a third time. Tom Reeves, a headhunter, someone who had been watching my work, someone who claimed to know something about my family's company. The voicemail was dated Sunday, 3 days before I found the payroll report on the copy machine, 3 days before I knew anything was wrong, which meant Tom Reeves had called me before I discovered the truth. Almost like he knew what was coming, almost like someone had tipped him off about what I was about to find. I could ignore it, go home, curl up on my couch with a bottle of wine and figure out my life tomorrow. That was the safe choice, the comfortable choice, the choice that would let me pretend for one more night that everything might somehow work out. But I had spent 6 years being comfortable, being safe, being the good daughter who never asked questions and never made waves and never demanded to be treated like she mattered. Look where that had gotten me. I dialed the number before I could talk myself out of it. He picked up on the second ring. His voice was calm, professional, but with an undercurrent of something else. Relief, maybe. Like he had been waiting for my call, like he had started to worry I would never make it. Miss Mitchell, I am glad you reached out. I was beginning to think you had not gotten my message. I have been busy. I heard. He paused, and I could almost hear him choosing his next words carefully. Word travels fast in this industry, especially when a Mitchell walks out of Mitchell and Associates. I gripped my steering wheel tighter. How did you know about that? It happened 2 hours ago. I have sources, good ones, people who pay attention to things that matter. And what happened today, Miss Mitchell, that matters, more than you know. He explained his background while I sat in that parking garage, engine still off, the world outside my windshield feeling increasingly unreal. 22 years in executive recruitment, specialized in commercial real estate, had placed CFOs at 3 of the largest property management firms on the East Coast. He knew everyone worth knowing, and everyone worth knowing knew him. But here is what I do not understand, I said when he finished his credentials. You called me 3 days ago, before any of this happened, before I even knew about the salary disparity, before I had any reason to leave. How did you know to call me then? He paused. A long pause. The kind of pause that meant he was deciding how much to tell me, how much I was ready to hear. Because 3 days ago, I had lunch with someone who used to work at Mitchell and Associates, someone who left under complicated circumstances. And they told me something that made me think you might need options very soon. Who? What did they tell you? That is a conversation better had in person, Miss Mitchell. There was a rustling sound, like he was checking his calendar. Are you free tomorrow morning? There is a coffee shop on Maple Street. Neutral ground. Nice and public. I think once you hear what I have to say, you will understand why I have been watching your career with great interest. And why I reached out when I did. I should have said no. Should have been suspicious of a stranger who knew too much and revealed too little. Should have gone home and processed the trauma of the day before diving into whatever rabbit hole this man was offering. Instead, I said yes, wrote down the address, and drove home on autopilot, my mind racing with questions I could not answer. My apartment felt different that night, smaller, quieter, lonelier. I had lived here for 4 years, but it had never really felt like home, more like a place to sleep between shifts at the office. A storage unit for the person I was when I was not being Clara Mitchell, operations director, family disappointment, underpaid workhorse. The framed photo of me and Dad at my college graduation sat on the bookshelf by the window, his arm around my shoulders. Both of us smiling like the future was nothing but possibility. I picked it up, studied his face for signs of the man I had met in that office today. The man who had called me temporary, who had measured my worth in chromosomes and assumptions. I turned the frame face down, could not look at it anymore. My phone showed 17 missed calls by midnight. 4 from Dad, 6 from Jake, 3 from Ryan, 2 from Sandra, and 2 from numbers I did not recognize. I did not listen to any of the voicemails, was not ready for their words yet, their explanations, their attempts to rewrite what had happened into something more comfortable. Around midnight, a text came through from a number I did not have saved. No name attached. Just 6 words that made my heart stop. You did the right thing today. I stared at that message for 10 minutes. read it over and over until the words stopped making sense. It was not from Tom. His number was different. It was not from anyone in my contacts. Someone else knew what had happened. Someone else was watching. Someone else wanted me to know they approved. I should have been frightened. Should have been paranoid about strangers tracking my movements and sending mysterious messages in the middle of the night. But something about those 6 words felt less like surveillance and more like support, like someone out there understood, like I was not as alone as I felt. I did not sleep that night. Instead, I did what I always did when my mind would not stop spinning. I made spreadsheets, calculated my savings down to the penny, 4 months and 12 days if I was extremely careful, longer if I found a cheaper apartment, shorter if I could not find work. The math was terrifying. The silence was worse. Maple Street Coffee was the kind of place where deals got made, quiet booths with high backs for privacy, good lighting that flattered everyone, espresso that cost more than my lunch used to. I arrived 15 minutes early, but Tom was already there, sitting in the back corner with a clear view of the door, watching everyone who walked in. The habit of someone who had learned to always know his exits. He was older than I expected, mid-50s maybe. Silver hair swept back from a face that had aged well, wire-rimmed glasses that made him look like a professor or a doctor, someone you would trust with important information. He stood when I approached and shook my hand with the grip of someone who had closed 1,000 deals. "Thank you for coming, Miss Mitchell. Clara. And thank you for being cryptic enough to guarantee I would show up." He smiled at that, gestured to the seat across from him. I have learned that the truth lands better in person, especially truth as heavy as what I have to tell you. A waitress came and went. Coffee ordered, served, ignored. Tom reached into his briefcase and slid a folder across the table. Inside were printouts, financial statements, client lists, performance reports, all from Mitchell and Associates, all dated from the past 3 years. "Where did you get these?" "From the person I mentioned. The one who left under complicated circumstances." He pointed to a line item on the second page. "Do you recognize this account?" I did. The Henderson account. A mid-sized office complex that had mysteriously left Mitchell and Associates 2 years ago. I had managed them briefly before they terminated their contract. Dad blamed market conditions. Jake blamed the economy. Ryan blamed everyone except himself. "What about Henderson?" Tom leaned forward slightly. "The Henderson account left because your brother Ryan forged your signature on a contract amendment that cost them $40,000 in unexpected fees. When they complained to your father, he covered it up, offered them a settlement to keep quiet and sign a non-disclosure agreement. They took the money and walked." My hands went cold. "That is not possible. I never signed any amendment for Henderson. I would remember. You did not sign it, Clara. Ryan signed it. With your name. Using your signature from other documents as a template. And when Henderson threatened legal action, your father made it go away." He pointed to another page. Henderson was not the only one. "I have records of at least 6 accounts your brothers mismanaged over the past 3 years. Accounts that were blamed on market conditions or quietly cleaned up with settlements. And in every case, your name was attached somehow. Your signature, your authorization, your reputation." I felt sick. My coffee sat untouched, growing cold. "Why are you showing me this?" "Because you deserve to know the truth about how your family operated. And because the person who gave me these documents told me something else." He watched my face carefully, measuring my reaction. "They told me your father has a phrase he uses in private meetings when things go wrong. When one of your brothers makes a mistake that could cost the company money or reputation. He said it in front of witnesses dozens of times." "What phrase?" Tom's voice was quiet, almost gentle. "Clara will fix it." The words landed like a punch. "Clara will fix it." 4 words that explained everything. Why my client retention was so high, why my accounts never seemed to have problems, why I was always putting out fires I never saw start. I had not been putting out random fires. I had been cleaning up messes my brothers created, fixing mistakes that were blamed on circumstances but caused by incompetence, building a reputation for excellence on top of a foundation of hidden disasters. I had been their insurance policy, and they had never told me. "Who gave you these documents?" I asked. "Who is the person who left under complicated circumstances?" "Her name is Patricia Holloway. She was your father's operations manager 8 years ago, before you joined the company." I knew that name, vaguely, a ghost story around the office. Someone who had left suddenly, dramatically, someone Dad never spoke about. What happened to her? She found out about some financial irregularities, threatened to go to the board. 2 weeks later, she was gone. Your father told everyone she took a job in another state. I looked for her, Clara, for years. I look for everyone who disappears from companies I work with. Patricia Holloway does not exist anywhere in commercial real estate, not in any other state, not in any other industry. It is like she vanished. Then how do you have documents from her? Tom smiled. It was not a happy smile. Because Patricia did not vanish. She went into hiding, changed her name, built a new life where your father could not find her, and she has spent the last 8 years gathering evidence, waiting for the right moment, the right person. The right person for what? To finish what she started, to expose what your father really is. She could not do it alone, Clara. She was an outsider, no family connection, no standing to challenge his version of events. But you are different. You are his daughter. You have the original will. What original will? What are you talking about? He shook his head. That is for Patricia to explain, when you are ready, if you are ready. He pulled a business card from his pocket. Not his, someone else's name. Sarah Chen, executive mentor. A San Francisco phone number. This woman helped me start my own firm 15 years ago. She is retired now, but she mentors people in situations like yours. People who are ready to bet on themselves instead of waiting for permission. I already called her. She is expecting to hear from you. I took the card, ran my thumb over the embossed letters. Why would she help me? She does not know me because I told her your story, and because 30 years ago someone did the same thing for her. He stood, leaving money on the table for the coffee neither of us had touched. Think about what I told you, Clara. Think about what you want to do next, and when you are ready to talk to Patricia, call me. She has been waiting 8 years for someone like you. I think she has been waiting long enough. I sat in my car outside the coffee shop for a long time after Tom left. The folder he had given me sat in the passenger seat. Evidence of 6 years of lies. 6 years of being used as a shield. A cleanup crew. An insurance policy no one ever told me I was paying premiums on. I looked at the mysterious text from the night before. You did the right thing today. Whoever sent it knew something. Knew more than they were saying. Just like Tom. Just like Patricia, apparently. I was surrounded by people who had been watching me, waiting for me to see what they already knew. And now that I finally had my eyes open, I had no idea who to trust. I was about to start the car when my phone rang. Not a number I recognized. Not Tom, not the mysterious texter. I almost let it go to voicemail. But something made me pick up. Clara? A woman's voice. Shaky, scared, barely above a whisper. It is Linda. From accounting. Please do not hang up. Linda. The woman who had left the payroll report on the copy machine. The woman who had started all of this. I need to tell you something, she continued, her words tumbling out fast and frantic. I did not leave that report by accident. And there is more. So much more. But they are watching me, and I only have a few minutes. Can you meet me tonight? I gripped the phone tighter. Where? The parking lot behind St. Michael's Church on Orchard Street. 9 o'clock. Come alone. Park facing the exit. And Clara, do not tell anyone, not even the headhunter. Trust no one from the company. Her voice dropped even lower. No one. Linda had been specific about the instructions. 9 o'clock. The parking lot behind St. Michael's Church on Orchard Street. Come alone. Park facing the exit. Keep your engine running. It sounded like something from a spy movie. Clandestine meetings in church parking lots. Paranoid instructions about escape routes. But Linda's voice had been shaking so badly on the phone that I knew this was not melodrama. This was genuine fear, the kind of fear that comes from knowing too much about the wrong people. Before she hung up, she had said one more thing, one more instruction that made my blood run cold. If I am not there by 9:15, leave. Do not wait. Do not call. Just go home and forget I ever contacted you. And Clara, check your rearview mirror on the way there. Make sure no one follows you. I took a route I had never taken before. Side streets through residential neighborhoods I barely knew. Twice I pulled into random driveways and killed my headlights, sitting in darkness for 2 or 3 minutes, watching for any car that might be trailing me. The night was quiet, empty. Just me and my paranoia, and the growing certainty that everything I thought I knew about my life was built on lies. Nothing followed me. No headlights appeared in my rearview mirror. No suspicious vehicles lurked at intersections. But the absence of something visible did not mean the absence of something watching. I was beginning to understand that my family had eyes everywhere, and ears, and loyalties I had never suspected. St. Michael's was an old Catholic church that had seen better decades. The stained glass windows were dark at this hour, the stone facade weathered by 50 years of New England winters. The parking lot behind the building was poorly lit, bordered by overgrown hedges on 3 sides. I understood immediately why Linda had chosen this place. No security cameras, no streetlights strong enough to illuminate faces, no reason for anyone from Mitchell and Associates to ever think of looking here. I arrived at 8:52, parked facing the exit as instructed, left the engine running, watched the entrance in my rearview mirror while my heart hammered against my ribs. 8:55. Nothing. 9 o'clock. A car pulled into the lot, my hands tightened on the steering wheel. But it was not Linda's silver Honda. It was a black SUV with tinted windows so dark I could not see the driver. It paused at the entrance for a long moment, engine idling, headlights cutting through the darkness like searchlights. Then it began to move. Slowly, circling the lot in a wide arc, passing my car close enough that I could have reached out and touched its side mirror. I held my breath. Did not move. Did not look directly at it. Just sat there with my foot hovering over the gas pedal, ready to run. The SUV completed its circle, paused again near the exit. Then it pulled back onto the street and disappeared into the night. Wrong turn. Lost driver looking for an address. That was the reasonable explanation. But my hands were still shaking 5 minutes later, and I could not stop thinking about the black SUV I had seen outside the storage facility later that week. The same dark windows, the same predatory patience. 9:08. Another car pulled in. Headlights off this time. A silver Honda. Linda. She parked 3 spaces away from me but did not get out immediately. Through my rearview mirror, I watched her silhouette turn left, then right, scanning every shadow in the lot, looking for threats I could not see. Finally, her door opened. She crossed the distance between our cars in quick, nervous steps, almost running. She was carrying a large manila envelope clutched against her chest like a shield, like it contained something precious, something dangerous. The passenger door of my car opened and Linda slid inside. The interior light flashed briefly before she pulled the door shut, plunging us back into darkness. Her hands were trembling. I could see them shaking even in the dim light from the dashboard. "Thank you for coming." Her voice was barely above a whisper. "I was not sure you would. You said you had something to tell me. I have something to show you." She pressed the envelope against her lap, still not opening it. "And once you see it, you will understand why I could not say this over the phone, why I could not say it anywhere they might hear." Linda had worked for Mitchell and Associates for 11 years, longer than me. She had started as a junior bookkeeper fresh out of community college, worked her way up to senior accountant through competence and quiet dedication. She had seen everything that went through the financial side of that company, every payment, every invoice, every discrepancy that should have raised questions, but never did. For the past 3 years, she told me, she had been keeping copies of things she was never supposed to keep. Documents that should have been shredded, emails that should have been deleted, evidence of decisions that were never meant to see daylight. Why? I asked. Why risk your job, your career, everything to collect documents you might never use? Linda was quiet for a moment. When she spoke again, her voice had changed, softer, heavier with something that sounded like grief. Your mother. Before she passed, she came to see me. Did you know that? I felt the air leave my lungs. Mom had died 11 years ago. Heart attack, sudden and devastating. I had been in my senior year of college, too far away to say goodbye. I had never fully recovered from that loss, and I had certainly never known she had visited the company accountant before she died. She asked me to watch over the books, Linda continued, to make sure your father kept his promises. She was worried, Clara. More worried than I had ever seen her. And she made me swear. She took my hands and looked me in the eyes and made me swear to protect you if things ever went wrong. Protect me from what? From this. Linda finally opened the manila envelope. From everything he has done. Inside were dozens of pages. Financial statements covered in highlighted discrepancies, internal memos discussing how to handle problematic accounts, email printouts showing conversations that should never have happened, and something else. A document I had never seen before. My mother's will. Not the will that had been read after the funeral. I remembered that ceremony. The lawyer's office. Dad sitting stoic and strong. The three of us children learning that Mom had left everything to our father, with fixed cash inheritances for each of us. I had received $50,000. My brothers had received $200,000 each. Even in death, I had been valued at a quarter of their worth. But this document was different. This was dated 6 months before she died, and the terms were nothing like what we had been told. I do not understand, I whispered. This says I was supposed to receive 30% ownership of the company. Equal shares, Linda said quietly. 30% to you, 30% to Jake, 30% to Ryan, 10% held in trust for future grandchildren, and a provision that no shares could be sold without unanimous consent from all three of you. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely hold the pages. This is not what the lawyer read. This is not what we were told. Because your father destroyed this version. He replaced it with one that served his interests. The will that was executed, the one you heard read, was dated 2 weeks after this one, with terms that gave him complete control and ensured you would never have any real stake in the company. I looked up from the document, met Linda's eyes in the darkness. How do you have this? I found it years ago, buried in a file your father thought he had destroyed. She reached into the envelope again. But that is not the worst thing I found. There is a letter, Clara, from your mother. To you. She pulled out a single sheet of paper. Handwritten. My mother's familiar script. Elegant and flowing. The same handwriting that had signed my birthday cards and permission slips and college application recommendations. The letter was dated 1 week before she died. I found this in the shredder bin, Linda said. The machine had jammed. Your father did not realize it had not finished destroying everything. She pressed the letter into my hands. I have kept it safe for 11 years. Waiting for the right moment. I am sorry it took so long. I am so sorry. I read the letter by the light of my phone screen. My mother's words, written to me, never delivered. My darling Clara. If you are reading this, something has gone wrong. Your father has made promises he may not keep. I need you to know the truth about this company, about your brothers, and about what you truly deserve. I have tried to ensure your future is protected. I have revised my will to give you equal ownership of Mitchell and Associates. Your father agreed to these terms. He promised me, Clara. He promised that you would be treated fairly, that your contributions would be valued, that your brothers would not be given advantages simply because of their gender. But I have learned not to trust promises anymore, not even from the man I married. Your brothers are not bad men, but they are weak men. Your father has made them that way. He has given them everything without requiring anything in return. And I fear that when I am gone, they will take what they have not earned because they have never learned another way. If you are reading this letter, it means your father did not keep his word. It means the will I created was not the will that was executed. And it means you need to protect yourself. I have asked your father to give you this letter if anything happens to me. If you are reading it, he kept his promise. If you never receive it, then my fears were justified. In that case, my darling, you must be strong. Do not trust promises. Trust only what is written, signed, and witnessed. And know that I always believed you were the strongest of my children, the one who would survive, the one who would thrive. I love you. Always, Mom. I sat in the darkness of that parking lot with my mother's letter in my hands and tears streaming down my face. 11 years since the funeral. 11 years of believing I had been treated fairly. 11 years of thinking she had simply trusted Dad to do the right thing. It had all been a lie. Everything. Every moment of my life since she died had been shaped by my father's betrayal. He had destroyed her will, stolen my inheritance, hidden the letter that would have warned me about everything, and he had smiled at me every day while doing it. Why now? I finally asked, my voice breaking. Why tell me all this now? Because I am leaving. Linda glanced out the window, checking the parking lot again. I put in my resignation yesterday. Told them I am moving to take care of my sick sister in Oregon. But the truth is I cannot stay there anymore. Not after what I have seen. Not after what they have done. What do you mean? What else have they done? Your father and your brothers, they are not just going to let you walk away. You know too much now. You have seen too much. And once they realize you have these documents, Linda stopped, seemed to gather her courage. Clara, there was a woman before you joined the company, Patricia Holloway. She was your father's operations manager. She found out about some financial irregularities and threatened to go to the board. I know that name. Tom mentioned her. 2 weeks after she threatened to expose your father, she was gone. They said she took a job in another state. But I looked for her, Clara. I searched every database, every professional registry, every social media platform. Patricia Holloway does not exist anywhere in this industry. It is like she disappeared. She pressed a small flash drive into my palm, along with the envelope. Take these. Everything I just gave you is on here too. Recordings of staff meetings where your father discussed keeping you manageable. Conversations between your brothers about whose name to put on your projects, and one conversation from last week. After you quit. What conversation? Your father and Jake, discussing how to make sure you never work in this industry again. They are already making calls, Clara, poisoning wells before you can drink from them. She opened the car door, letting in a rush of cold night air. Keep these documents somewhere safe, not your apartment, somewhere they would never think to look. And do not confront your father about any of this. Not yet. Not until you have a plan. Not until you have protection. What kind of protection? The kind money can buy, or the kind that comes from being too visible to touch. She stepped out of the car, then paused, reaching into her pocket one last time. One more thing. She handed me a business card. I made a call tonight. To someone who has been waiting a long time to hear from you. Your grandmother, Eleanor Mitchell. She knows what her son has done. She has known for years. And she is ready to help. My grandmother, Dad's mother. I had not spoken to her since Mom's funeral. Dad told me she had disowned me, blamed me for not being there when Mom died, said she never wanted to see me again. Another lie. How many more were there? Linda walked to her car without looking back. I watched her pull out of the lot, her taillights disappearing around the corner. Then I sat alone in the darkness, holding proof of my father's crimes, and tried to remember how to breathe. I was about to start my car when my phone buzzed. A text from a blocked number. Different from the encouraging message I had received the night before. Different from anything I had ever seen. We know you met with her. We know what she gave you. You have 48 hours to return the documents to your father's office. No copies, no lawyers, no police. Do this, and we forget tonight ever happened." The next line made my blood freeze. "Refuse, and we will make Patricia Holloway look lucky. 48 hours. I had 48 hours to decide what kind of woman I was going to be, the kind who surrendered to fear, or the kind who finally fought back. I looked at the flash drive in my hand, at my mother's letter, at the truth my family had buried for 11 years. Then I started my car and drove toward my future, whatever that turned out to be. I sat in that church parking lot for a long time after Linda drove away. The threatening text glowed on my phone screen, the words burning themselves into my memory. 48 hours. Return the documents, or become the next Patricia Holloway. The old Clara would have been terrified, would have driven straight to her father's office at first light and handed everything back, would have apologized for causing trouble, would have accepted whatever scraps of dignity they allowed her to keep, and spent the rest of her life pretending none of this had ever happened. But the old Clara had died in that HR meeting. She had died when her father called her temporary, when he measured her worth in chromosomes, and dismissed 6 years of excellence with a wave of his hand. The woman sitting in this car, holding her mother's stolen letter and evidence of her family's crimes, was someone new, someone who had nothing left to lose. I read the threatening text one more time. Then I did something that surprised even me. I laughed, not because it was funny, but because after everything I had learned tonight, after seeing my mother's destroyed will and the letter that should have warned me years ago, after learning that someone named Patricia Holloway had vanished for knowing too much, they thought a text message would scare me into submission. They thought threats would work on someone who had just discovered her entire life was built on lies. They had no idea who they were dealing with anymore. Neither did I, honestly, but I was about to find out. I did not drive home. Home was predictable. Home was where they would expect me to go. Instead, I drove to a 24-hour storage facility on the other side of the city. Paid cash for the smallest unit available, using a name that was not quite mine, and locked the envelope and flash drive inside, memorizing the combination, telling no one. Then I sat in my car and called Tom Reeves. It was nearly 11 at night. He answered on the 4th ring, his voice groggy but alert the moment he heard my name. "Clara? Is everything all right?" "No. Everything is very far from all right. But I think you already knew that." I told him about Linda, about the documents she had given me, about my mother's original will and the letter that had never been delivered, about Patricia Holloway and the threat I had received. I told him everything, the words pouring out of me like water through a broken dam. Tom listened, without interrupting. When I finally stopped talking, the silence stretched for a long moment. "Clara, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest with me. The person who told me about your family's company, the one who left under complicated circumstances, her name was Patricia Holloway. I know, Linda told me about her. She said Patricia disappeared, that no one can find her anywhere. She did not disappear." His voice was quiet. "Careful, she went into hiding, changed her name, built a new life in a new state where your father could not find her. And she has spent the last 8 years gathering evidence, waiting for the right moment and the right person to bring Mitchell and Associates down. She is alive? Very much alive, and she has been waiting for someone like you for a very long time." Tom explained what Patricia could not do on her own. She had been an outsider, no family connection, no legal standing to challenge Robert Mitchell's version of events. Any accusations she made could be dismissed as the ravings of a disgruntled former employee. But I was different. I was his daughter. I had the original will, witnessed and notarized. I had standing that Patricia never had. She could not do it alone, Tom said. But together, with everything she has gathered and everything you now have, you could do something she never could. What are you suggesting? I am suggesting you do not just walk away from your family's company. I am suggesting you take what is rightfully yours, or build something even better. We talked for almost an hour. Tom laid out the options with the precision of someone who had been thinking about this for years. I could comply with the threat, return the documents, spend the rest of my life looking over my shoulder, waiting for the next demand, the next betrayal, the next moment when my father decided I was more trouble than I was worth. Or I could fight. Fighting meant lawyers. It meant going public with the original will. It meant challenging the estate settlement and my father's control of the company. It meant war against people who had already proven they would do anything to protect their secrets. I do not have money for lawyers, I said. I have 4 months of savings. That is it. You will not need money, not yet. You have something better. What? Leverage. Those recordings Linda gave you. The evidence of fraud, of forged signatures, of cover-ups. Your father built his reputation on being an honest businessman, a family man, a pillar of the community. How much do you think that reputation is worth to him? How far do you think he would go to protect it? I understood what Tom was suggesting. This was not about going to court, not yet. This was about making my father understand that the cost of silencing me was higher than the cost of letting me go, higher than the cost of giving me what I deserved. There is something else, Tom continued. Before you do anything, you need to meet Sarah Chen. Tomorrow. I have already called her. She is flying in from San Francisco. Flying in? For me? For you. And for Patricia. And for every woman your father has ever underestimated. Tom explained that Sarah was more than just a business mentor. She was part of a network, women in business who had faced situations like mine, women who had been pushed out, silenced, erased from companies they had helped build. They had found each other over the years, built something together. They helped each other, invested in each other, protected each other. It is not a formal organization, Tom said. No name, no membership list. Just women who remember what it felt like to be told they did not belong, and who made it their mission to ensure other women had the chances they almost did not get. Patricia was one of the first. Sarah was the founder. And if you are willing, Clara, you could be next. Tom insisted I not go home that night. Too predictable, too exposed. He booked me a room at a motel 40 minutes outside the city under a name that was not mine. Paid for it himself. Consider it an investment, he said. In your future, and in watching your father's face when he realizes he underestimated the wrong person. The motel room was clean but sparse. A bed with a floral comforter that had seen better decades. A television I did not turn on. A window that looked out on a parking lot and a highway beyond. I sat on the edge of the bed and let myself feel everything I had been holding back since that moment in my father's office. I still had my mother's letter, a copy I had made at the storage unit before locking the original away. I read it again by the light of the bedside lamp. Then again. Her handwriting blurred through my tears, but I kept reading, kept tracing the curves of her letters with my fingertip, kept hearing her voice in my head, the way she used to say my name when I was a child and everything felt safe. She had believed in me, had tried to protect me, had loved me enough to plan for a future she would never see. And my father had taken all of it, had destroyed her wishes and hidden her words, and let me spend 11 years believing I was worth less than my brothers because that was simply how things were. I cried for the first time since this all began. Not for the job I had lost, not for the family that had betrayed me, but for my mother, for all the years we could have had, for all the conversations we would never have, for the protection she had tried to give me that had been stolen before I ever knew it existed. But grief, I was learning, could be fuel, pain could be purpose, and love, even love from someone gone, could be armor. I wiped my eyes, pulled out my phone, and sent one text to the blocked number that had threatened me. No, one word. But it changed everything. Sarah Chen was not what I expected. I had imagined a corporate warrior, power suits and sharp edges and the kind of presence that made grown men step aside. Instead, the woman who met me at a quiet restaurant the next morning looked like someone's favorite aunt. Soft gray hair, warm smile, A cardigan that probably cost more than my car but looked like something you would wear to a book club meeting. But her eyes told a different story. They were sharp, watchful, the eyes of someone who had survived things she did not talk about in polite company. Clara Mitchell. She extended her hand. I have heard a lot about you. All of it impressive. Over breakfast, Sarah told me her story. 30 years ago, she had been exactly where I was now. Different industry, different family, same betrayal. She had built her own company from nothing after being pushed out of her family's business. Had grown it into something worth $50 million before selling and stepping back from active management. I did not retire to play golf, Sarah said. I retired to help women like you. Because someone helped me once. And the debt never goes away. It just changes hands. She wanted to know everything. My background, my skills, my vision for what I could build if I had the resources and the freedom. I talked for nearly an hour while she listened, occasionally asking questions that cut straight to the heart of whatever I was trying to explain. The mid-market property sector, I said at one point, it is underserved. The big firms do not want accounts under $50 million in assets. Too small for their fee structures. The boutique firms cannot handle the complexity or the volume. There is a gap, and I know that market. I have been serving it for 6 years. I just never got credit for it. Sarah smiled. It was the first real smile I had seen from her. That is exactly what Tom said you would say. She was prepared to invest. Not just money, though she offered that too. Connections, introductions, access to clients who were tired of working with firms that treated them as afterthoughts. The network she had built over 30 years opened up for someone she had just met. Clara, let me tell you something no one told me until it was almost too late. Her voice was gentle but firm. Revenge is satisfying, but success is better. Do not destroy your father's company because it will feel good. Build your own because it will make you free. The destruction will happen on its own. It always does when the foundation is rotten. There is one condition, Sarah added. You have to let Patricia help you. She knows more about your father's operation than anyone, and she deserves to see this through. She has earned that. Where is she? Waiting for my call. Ready to come out of hiding. Ready to finally finish what she started 8 years ago. I spent the rest of the day with Sarah, planning, strategizing, laying the groundwork for what would become Mitchell Property Solutions, a name that would make my father choke when he heard it. A company built on everything he had tried to deny me, a future he had never seen coming. By evening, I felt something I had not felt in years. Hope. Real hope. Not the desperate hope of someone waiting to be saved, but the fierce hope of someone building her own rescue. I finally went back to my apartment as the sun was setting. Sarah had arranged for a security consultant to check it first. All clear. No listening devices, no signs of entry. Just my quiet space, waiting for me like nothing had changed, even though everything had. I was making tea when I heard it. A knock at the door. Soft, deliberate, not aggressive but insistent. I checked the peephole and felt my heart stop. Jake. My brother stood in the hallway, alone. His face was pale and drawn like he had not slept in days. Dark circles under his eyes, stubble on his jaw. He looked nothing like the polished executive who had ignored me in the break room just days ago. And in his hands, he held something that made no sense. A bouquet of white lilies, Mom's favorite flowers, the ones we had put on her grave every year until Dad decided it was too morbid and stopped the tradition. Clara. His voice cracked on my name. Please, I need to talk to you. It is about Dad. It is about what he is planning. And Clara, I am scared. I think he is going to do something terrible. Not to you. He paused, swallowed hard. To himself. Please, you are the only one who can stop him. I stood frozen, my hand on the deadbolt, trying to decide if this was a trap or a warning. Trying to figure out if the brother who had taken credit for my work and collected twice my salary could possibly be telling the truth, and wondering if it even mattered anymore. I stood with my hand on the deadbolt, staring at the distorted image of my brother through the peephole. Jake Mitchell, the golden child, the one who had never worked a weekend in his life. The one who had collected $95,000 a year while I scraped by on $42,000 for doing twice the work. And now he was at my door with our mother's favorite flowers, claiming our father was planning something terrible. Every instinct screamed trap. This was exactly what they would do. Send the charming one. The diplomat. The brother with the easy smile and the voice that could sell ice to penguins. Jake had always been the family peacemaker, the one who smoothed things over when tensions ran high, the one who made problems disappear with a few well-chosen words and a disarming laugh. Was I just another problem to disappear? But something was different tonight. Through the peephole, I could see Jake's hands trembling. The flowers shook like leaves in a storm, and his eyes, those confident blue eyes that had never known a moment of real doubt, were red-rimmed. Raw. He had been crying. Jake had not cried since Mom's funeral. Not even then, really. He had been too busy being strong for Dad, too busy playing the role of the reliable son. I thought about Mom's letter. The words she had written about my brothers. They are not bad men, but they are weak men. Your father has made them that way. Maybe weak men could still surprise you. Maybe weakness, pushed far enough, could become something else entirely. I opened the door. Jake stepped inside like he was entering a crime scene, hesitant, looking around my small apartment as if seeing it for the first time. He probably was. In 6 years of working together, in 28 years of being siblings, none of my family had ever visited me here. Not once. I had invited them, had suggested dinners, movie nights, casual get-togethers. The invitations had always been declined with excuses that seemed reasonable at the time, but now felt like calculated distance. "You can sit down," I said, not offering tea or coffee or anything resembling hospitality. "Talk." He placed the lilies on my kitchen counter. His hands were still shaking. I noticed he was wearing the same suit he had worn to work the day I quit, wrinkled now, like he had slept in it, or not slept at all. "I do not know where to start. Try the beginning, or the part where you explain why you are here instead of sending another threatening text." His head snapped up. Threatening text? "Clara, I did not send any text. Was it from a blocked number?" I nodded, watching his reaction carefully, looking for the lie, for the flicker of guilt that would tell me everything I needed to know. That was Ryan. Something like pain crossed Jake's features. He has been handling the situation. Dad gave him the job because he said I did not have the stomach for it. He laughed, but there was no humor in it. He was right. I do not. Jake sat on the edge of my couch like he might need to run at any moment. The confident executive I had watched coast through life for years was gone, deflated. In his place was someone I barely recognized, someone who looked as lost as I felt. "Clara, I need to tell you something, and you are going to hate me even more than you already do. But I cannot keep carrying this anymore. It is killing me." "What is killing you, Jake? The guilt of making twice my salary? The guilt of taking credit for my work? Or something else?" He flinched like I had slapped him. The reaction was so genuine, so unguarded, that I felt the first crack in my certainty that this was all an elaborate manipulation, all of it. His voice dropped to barely a whisper. "But there is more. So much more." Jake started talking. Slowly at first, the words dragged out like confessions from a reluctant witness. Then faster, more urgent, like a dam that had finally broken after holding back years of pressure. He had known about the salary disparity. Of course he had. Everyone in the company had known. It was an open secret, discussed in hushed tones in the break room and at happy hours where I was never invited. But Jake had told himself it was just how things were, that I was okay with it, that I would have said something if I were not. "I know how pathetic that sounds now," he said, staring at his hands. "I know there is no excuse. But you have to understand, Clara, I have spent my whole life doing what Dad expected, being who he wanted me to be. I never questioned anything because questioning meant losing everything. Losing what? Your salary, your corner office, your parking spot next to the elevator? Losing him. Jake's voice cracked on the word. You do not know what it was like after Mom died. You were at college, starting your life. I was here, watching him fall apart. And then watching him put himself back together into someone I barely recognized. The dad we grew up with died when Mom did. The man running that company now, he scares me, Clara. He has scared me for years. I sat down across from him, not forgiving, not ready to trust, but listening, really listening for the first time since he had walked through my door. Jake knew about the original will. Not all the details, but enough. He had overheard arguments between our parents before Mom got sick, arguments that happened late at night when they thought no one was listening, arguments about fairness, about promises, about what would happen to the children if something happened to her. She made him swear, Clara. I heard her. One night when I came home late from a party, they were in the kitchen. They did not know I was in the hallway. She made him swear on her grave that he would treat you equally, that he would honor what she wanted. And he did not. He destroyed the original will 3 days after the funeral. Jake's eyes met mine, and I saw years of guilt pooling in them. I watched him do it, in his study. He put it through the shredder, and then he burned the pieces in the fireplace. I was too afraid to say anything. I have been too afraid to say anything for 11 years. The words hung in the air between us. 11 years of silence. 11 years of complicity. 11 years of watching me work twice as hard for half the reward while knowing the whole time that I had been cheated out of my inheritance. There is more. Jake's voice had dropped so low I had to lean forward to hear him. The salary difference, the forged signatures on your accounts, taking credit for your work. None of that was random. It was not just negligence or casual sexism. It was deliberate. Dad called it managing expectations. He said if you were paid less, you would work harder to prove yourself. If you never got credit, you would never have leverage to ask for more. He engineered your invisibility, Clara. He designed a system to keep you small and productive and completely dependent on his approval. I felt sick. Actually, physically sick, like the ground had tilted beneath me and I was sliding toward an edge I could not see. And I helped. Every time I put my name on your report. Every time I stayed quiet in a meeting when you deserved recognition. Every time I cashed a paycheck that should have been smaller, so yours could have been larger. I helped him do this to you. The room was silent except for the hum of my refrigerator and the distant sound of traffic. I did not know what to say, did not know how to process the fact that my own brother, the person who had grown up in the same house, shared the same memories, loved the same mother, had participated in my systematic erasure for over a decade. Why are you telling me this now, Jake? Why tonight? Because of what happened today. At the office, Jake explained. After I sent my one-word refusal to Ryan's threat, our father had called an emergency meeting, just the three of them, Dad, Jake, and Ryan. In the conference room at the end of the executive hall, the one with the soundproofed walls and no windows, the one where the really sensitive decisions were made. Dad was different today. Jake's hands were shaking again, cold, calculating, like he had already made decisions and was just going through the motions of consulting us. He said you had forced his hand, said he had offered you every chance to be reasonable and you had chosen war. He paused, swallowed hard, and then he said something that made me realize I could not stay silent anymore. He said if Clara will not come back to the family willingly, we will have to give her a reason to need us again. The words sent ice through my veins. A reason to need them. What did that mean? What was my father planning that would force me back under his control? Dad has contacts on the professional licensing board. Jake was speaking faster now, like he was afraid he would lose his nerve if he slowed down. Friends who owe him favors from years of political donations and quiet arrangements. He is going to challenge your credentials, claim you falsified parts of your resume, create enough doubt that no legitimate firm will touch you. That is insane. My credentials are impeccable. He knows that. He does not care about the truth. He cares about the narrative. He has done it before, Clara. There was a competitor a few years ago who tried to poach some of our major clients. Dad made some calls. 3 months later, the guy lost his license. Last I heard, he was selling insurance in some strip mall outside Cleveland. I thought about what Linda had said, about Patricia Holloway, about people who challenged my father and simply disappeared. And then Ryan said something about making sure you ended up like Patricia. Jake's voice broke. Dad laughed. Actually laughed. And I realized that I have been protecting a monster. We all have, and I cannot do it anymore. The silence stretched between us. I studied my brother's face, looking for any sign of deception. Any hint that this was another manipulation, another layer in a game I did not fully understand. What do you want, Jake? Absolution? I cannot give you that. I do not want absolution. I want to help. He explained what he could offer. Inside information, access to company records, knowledge of Dad's plans before they happened. He was still in the inner circle. Dad still trusted him. He could be my eyes and ears inside Mitchell and Associates, feeding me intelligence while pretending to be the loyal son. Why would you do that? He is your father too. The same blood runs through both of us. Jake reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out something small, a photograph, worn at the edges like it had been handled many times. He handed it to me. It was the 4 of us, Mom, Dad, Jake, and me. At my 8th birthday party, the one where Mom had surprised me with a puppy I had been begging for. Everyone was smiling. Everyone was happy. Before the cancer, before the betrayal, before we became the broken people sitting in this apartment. Because this is who we were supposed to be. Jake's voice was thick with tears. And because Mom would have wanted me to protect you. I failed her for 11 years. I am not failing her anymore. I looked at the photo for a long time. At my mother's smile. At the way she was looking at me like I was the most precious thing in the world. At the father who had his arm around all of us, before he became the man who would destroy her wishes and discard her memory. If I let you help me, I said finally, there is no going back. You understand that? When this is over, you will not have a father. You might not have a career. You will have nothing except the knowledge that you did the right thing. The right thing. Jake smiled, but it was sad and broken. I have never done that before. Maybe it is time I started. We talked for another hour, logistics, strategies, how to communicate without being detected, what information would be most valuable, how to protect Jake's cover while extracting maximum intelligence. We were about to set up secure communication channels when Jake's phone rang. He looked at the screen and his face went white. That was my contact at the office. He was already standing, moving toward the door. Dad had security sweep the building tonight. They found something. Found what? Ryan knows about the storage unit. My blood went cold. What storage unit? The one on Walker Street, where you hid the documents. Ryan has a contact at the facility, a security guard who owes him money. He knows you have a unit there. He is planning to get inside tomorrow night. The documents, the will, Mom's letter, the flash drive with the recordings, everything Linda had risked her career to give me, everything that could bring my father down. How long have you known this? He told Dad about it 2 hours ago. That is the other reason I came. You need to move everything. Tonight, before they can take it. I grabbed my keys before Jake finished speaking. The clock was ticking again. And this time, I might already be too late. I drove faster than I had ever driven in my life. Red lights became suggestions. Speed limits became distant memories. The storage facility on Walker Street was 23 minutes away under normal conditions. I had maybe 15 minutes before the facility closed at midnight. 15 minutes to get there, get inside, and get everything out before the gates locked for the night, and Ryan's contact had all the time in the world to help himself to my evidence. Jake's warning echoed in my head as I wove through traffic. Ryan knows about the storage unit. He is planning to get inside tomorrow night. But what if tomorrow night had become tonight? What if Ryan had decided not to wait? What if he was already there, already rifling through my mother's letter and the documents that could destroy our father? I was 6 blocks away when I saw it. A black SUV parked across the street from the storage facility entrance. The same kind of SUV that had circled the church parking lot the night I met Linda. Engine running, lights off, tinted windows hiding whoever sat inside, waiting, watching. Someone had gotten there first. My foot hovered over the brake. Every rational thought told me to turn around, to go home, to accept that the evidence was lost and find another way to fight. But then I thought about my mother's letter, about her handwriting, about the words she had written just for me, words my father had stolen and hidden for 11 years. I could not let him take them again. I could not go through the front entrance, not with that SUV watching every car that approached. But I remembered the facility layout from when I had first rented the unit. There was a back fence, an emergency exit for employees, a section of the property that bordered an empty lot filled with overgrown weeds and construction debris. I parked 2 blocks away, behind a closed pharmacy, killed the engine, killed the lights, sat in darkness for 30 seconds, watching, waiting, making sure no one had followed me. No headlights appeared in my rearview mirror. The street was empty. I grabbed my phone and the small flashlight I kept in my glove compartment. Left my purse, left anything that might slow me down. And I ran. The back of the storage facility was exactly as I remembered. Chain link fence, 8 feet tall, topped with rusted barbed wire. But there was a gap, a section where the fence had been bent and twisted, probably by teenagers looking for a place to party or homeless people seeking shelter. The gap was narrow, too narrow for comfort. But I was desperate, and desperation made anything possible. I squeezed through the opening. The metal caught my jacket, tore through the fabric, scraped against my arm hard enough to draw blood. I did not stop, did not look back, did not waste a single second on pain or fear. Inside the facility, the emergency lighting cast everything in a dim orange glow. Row after row of identical metal doors stretched out in both directions. Unit 117, ground floor, east side, maybe 200 yards away. I had 11 minutes before the automatic lockdown sealed every entrance and exit. I moved quickly but quietly, staying close to the walls, listening for footsteps, voices, anything that suggested I was not alone. The facility was silent except for the hum of ventilation systems and the distant rumble of traffic on the highway. My own breathing sounded impossibly loud in the stillness. Unit 117 appeared at the end of the row. My hands were shaking so badly it took 3 tries to enter the combination. The lock clicked. The door rolled up with a metallic screech that seemed to echo through the entire building. Everything was still there. The manila envelope, the flash drive, my mother's letter, carefully preserved in a plastic sleeve, untouched, waiting for me. I allowed myself 1 second of relief before grabbing everything and stuffing it into the messenger bag I had worn across my body. I was about to close the unit when I heard it. Footsteps, heavy, deliberate, coming from the direction of the main entrance. Multiple sets of footsteps, moving with the coordinated precision of people who knew exactly what they were looking for. I froze, pressed myself against the inside of the unit, hidden in shadow. The footsteps stopped somewhere nearby. Then a voice, low and angry, echoed through the corridor. "Check every unit on the east side. She is here somewhere. Her car is not at her apartment and she is not answering her phone. This is the only place she would go." Ryan. That was Ryan's voice. He had not waited until tomorrow. He was here now, and he had brought backup. I closed the unit door as quietly as I could, leaving just enough gap to see through. The automatic lights in this section had not triggered yet. I was still in shadow, but the moment I moved, the motion sensors would give me away. Think. The emergency exit was 50 yards away. Ryan and whoever was with him were coming from the west. I had maybe 90 seconds before they reached my row, maybe less. I slipped off my shoes, held them in one hand, the messenger bag pressed tight against my body with the other. And I ran. The motion-activated lights flickered on behind me as I moved, creating a trail of illumination that marked my path like a spotlight. I heard someone shout, heard footsteps break into a run. But I did not look back. The emergency exit loomed ahead, a glowing red sign above a heavy metal door. 10 yards, 5. I hit the push bar with my full weight and burst into the night. The empty lot behind the facility was dark and treacherous, filled with rocks and broken glass and debris that cut into my feet as I ran. Pain shot up my legs with every step, but I did not slow down, did not stop until I reached my car, did not breathe until I was inside with the doors locked and the engine running. In my rearview mirror, I saw flashlight beams sweeping the back fence. They had found my exit point. But they were too late. I pulled onto the street and drove. No destination in mind. Just away. My phone rang as I merged onto the highway. An unknown number. After everything that had happened, I almost let it go to voicemail. Almost decided that no good news could come from strangers calling in the middle of the night. But something made me answer. Clara? A woman's voice. Calm, steady, familiar in a way I could not place. This is Patricia. Patricia Holloway. I think it is time we finally met. I nearly drove off the road. Patricia, the woman who had disappeared 8 years ago, the ghost story that had haunted Mitchell and Associates, the person Tom had told me about, the one who had been gathering evidence and waiting for the right moment. How did you get this number? Sarah gave it to me. She said you might need help tonight. She was right, was she not? I told her about the storage unit, about Ryan, about barely escaping with the documents. Patricia listened without interrupting. When I finished, her voice was calm, measured, like someone who had been through far worse. You did well. Most people freeze the first time they are hunted. You ran. That is good. That means you will survive. There was a pause. Then she spoke again. I have been watching the situation from a distance, staying hidden. But Sarah's call changed things. You are not just another woman being pushed out, Clara. You have the evidence I spent 8 years trying to gather. And you have something else I never had. What? Standing. You are his daughter. You have legal rights to challenge him. I was just an employee. He could dismiss anything I said as the complaints of a disgruntled worker. But you have blood. You have the will. You have standing that I never could. I have been waiting for someone like you, she continued. Someone with proof and standing. Someone who could finish what I started. I am done hiding, Clara. Tell me where you are. I will come to you. And then we will make a plan that your father never sees coming. We met at a truck stop 40 minutes outside the city. Anonymous, transient. The kind of place where no one remembered faces and no one asked questions. I arrived first, ordered coffee I did not intend to drink, and sat in a booth facing the door. Patricia walked in 20 minutes later. I recognized her from the old company photos I had found online during my research. But the woman who slid into the booth across from me looked different. Harder. Like someone who had been sharpened by years of running and hiding and waiting for a justice that never came. Clara Mitchell. She studied my face with eyes that missed nothing. You look like your mother. You knew my mother? I knew her better than anyone at that company. She hired me, Clara. Did you know that? Not your father. Your mother. I was her project, her investment. She wanted to prove that the company could succeed with women in leadership positions. And when your father pushed me out, she was the only one who fought for me. Patricia's voice softened with something like grief. She called me the night before I left, warned me that your father was planning something, told me to take copies of everything I could carry. She saved my life, Clara. And I have spent 8 years trying to find a way to repay that debt. We talked until the sky began to lighten. Patricia had spent nearly a decade building a case against my father, collecting evidence from former employees, tracking financial irregularities, documenting the pattern of women being pushed out, silenced, or destroyed. She had everything except the one thing she needed most, an insider with legal standing. Together, we had everything. The plan began to take shape as we talked. I would start my own company, use my skills, my reputation, my relationships with clients who had always preferred working with me, build something successful and visible and impossible to ignore. Meanwhile, Patricia would help me compile the legal case, the original will, the forged signatures, the cover-ups, everything documented, organized, and ready. "We do not attack first," Patricia said. "We build, we grow, we become too successful to ignore and too visible to touch. And when your father makes his move, because he will make a move, we will be ready. We will destroy him with his own weapons." I drove back to the city as the sun rose over the horizon. I had not slept in over 30 hours. My feet were cut and bleeding from the run through the empty lot. My arms still stung where the fence had torn my jacket. But I felt more awake than I had in years. My phone buzzed as I approached my neighborhood. A text from Jake. "Meeting with lawyer still on?" "I will be there. Dad does not suspect anything." I replied with the time and address, then added, "Thank you for warning me about the storage unit. They almost got everything." His response came immediately. "Almost? I got there first." A pause. Then, "Good. Clara, be careful today. Something is happening at the office." Dad called an emergency board meeting for this afternoon. No agenda, no explanation. He is planning something big. I pulled into my apartment complex as the morning light spread across the sky. The exhaustion was catching up with me. I needed sleep. Just a few hours. Just enough to function. I was walking toward my building, keys in hand, when I stopped dead in my tracks. Someone was sitting on my doorstep. An elderly woman, wrapped in a wool coat despite the mild morning air. White hair pinned back from a face I had not seen in 11 years. A face I had been told wanted nothing to do with me. A face that had been absent from every birthday, every graduation, every moment of my adult life. My grandmother, Eleanor Mitchell, my father's mother. The woman he had told me had disowned me after my mother's funeral. She stood slowly, leaning on a cane, her eyes sharp and clear despite her 83 years. Clara. Her voice was thin but steady. "I know what my son has done. I know what he is planning. And I know about the will he destroyed." She reached into her coat and pulled out an envelope, yellowed with age. "Because I have the only other copy. Your mother gave it to me for safekeeping the week before she died. It is time you had it." I stood frozen in the morning light, staring at a ghost who had just handed me a weapon I did not know existed. My grandmother stood before me in the pale morning light, holding an envelope that had been hidden for 11 years. Eleanor Mitchell, 83 years old. The woman my father had told me wanted nothing to do with me since the day we buried my mother. "Before I let you in," I said, finding my voice through the shock, "I need to know something. Dad told me you disowned me after Mom's funeral. He said you blamed me for not being there when she died. He said you never wanted to see me again." Eleanor's face shifted. Something between pain and fury crossed her weathered features. Her grip on the cane tightened until her knuckles went white. "My son has told many lies over the years." Her voice was steady despite the emotion behind it. "That one may be the cruelest. I never disowned you, Clara. Never. He kept us apart, intercepted my letters, blocked my calls, changed his phone number and told me you had changed yours. Every birthday card I sent came back unopened. Every Christmas gift was returned. He told me you wanted nothing to do with me, that you blamed me for introducing your mother to him in the first place." She paused, and I saw 11 years of grief pooling in her eyes. "We have both been his victims, Clara. Now, are you going to let me in? Or shall we continue letting him win?" I opened the door. Eleanor lowered herself onto my couch with the careful movements of someone whose body had started to betray her. But her eyes were sharp, clear, the eyes of a woman who had been waiting a very long time for this moment. Where should I begin? The will. I sat across from her, my heart pounding. "How do you have a copy of my mother's will?" Eleanor explained. She had known my mother before Margaret married Robert Mitchell. They had been friends, real friends, the kind who shared secrets and kept them through decades. Eleanor had introduced them, in fact, a decision she had regretted for 30 years. Margaret knew what my son was. She loved him anyway at first. Love is blind, as they say, but blindness fades eventually, and when it cleared for your mother, she saw the truth about the man she had married. What truth? That Robert married her for her family's connections. Her father owned 6 commercial properties in downtown. When he died, those properties became Margaret's inheritance. And when Margaret married my son, Robert convinced her to fold them into Mitchell and Associates. That was the foundation of his empire, Clara. Not his business genius, not his legendary work ethic, your mother's inheritance. I felt the ground shift beneath me. Everything I thought I knew about my father's success was built on a lie. He had not created Mitchell and Associates from nothing. He had married into it, had taken my mother's legacy and called it his own. Your mother was not a foolish woman, Eleanor continued. She never fully trusted Robert. So when she updated her will before she died, she made 2 copies. One she gave to the family attorney, knowing Robert would find a way to influence him eventually. The other she gave to me. She made me promise to keep it safe, to give it to you when you were ready, when you needed it. I have been watching from a distance all these years, waiting for that moment. And then 3 days ago, I received a phone call. From who? From a woman named Linda. She said she worked in your father's accounting department. She told me what happened to you, what Robert had done, and she told me it was time. Eleanor reached out and took my hand. Her skin was paper thin, but her grip was strong. Linda did not just leave that payroll report by accident, Clara. She has been waiting too, watching. We all have been. Your mother built a network of people who loved her, people who promised to protect you if Robert ever broke his word. And now, finally, we can. I opened the envelope Eleanor had given me with trembling hands. Inside was a document identical to the one Linda had shown me in the church parking lot. But this version was different in one crucial way. It was notarized, signed by witnesses, and dated one day after the version in my father's files. This is the final version, Eleanor said, the one Margaret intended to be executed, the one Robert destroyed and replaced with his own. I read through the terms carefully, though I already knew what they would say. 30% ownership to me, 30% to Jake, 30% to Ryan, 10% held in trust for future grandchildren, a provision requiring unanimous consent for any sale of shares. But there was one clause I had not seen before, one provision that made my blood run cold. In the event that Robert Mitchell attempts to alter or invalidate this will, or in the event of his proven infidelity, his share of all jointly held properties shall revert to the children equally, and he shall be removed as executor. I looked up from the document, met my grandmother's eyes. Proven infidelity? Eleanor's expression darkened. Your mother discovered something 2 months before she died. Your father had been having an affair, for years, with his business partner's wife, a woman named Veronica Shaw. The name meant nothing to me, but the implications made my stomach turn. Margaret was going to file for divorce. That is why she updated the will. That is why she added the infidelity clause. She wanted to make sure Robert could not touch her inheritance when she left him. The room went silent. I felt the words settling over me like a physical weight, like stones being placed on my chest one by one. Are you saying he had something to do with her death? I am saying your mother died of a sudden heart attack alone in that house, while your father was conveniently at a business dinner with 17 witnesses. Eleanor's voice was steady but cold. I am saying the autopsy was performed by a doctor who owed your father money. I am saying there were questions that were never asked. And I am saying that after 11 years of silence, I am done protecting my son from the consequences of what he may have done. 3 hours later, I sat in the office of Margaret Chen, one of the most respected estate attorneys in the state. Sarah had made the introduction. Margaret had cleared her entire afternoon. Jake was already there when I arrived. He looked worse than the night before, dark circles under his eyes, hands that would not stop trembling. But he was there. He had shown up. That counted for something. Jake told Margaret everything. The salary disparities he had known about and ignored. The forged signatures he had witnessed. The will he had watched his father destroy 3 days after our mother's funeral. His voice shook, but he did not stop, did not hold back, did not try to minimize his own complicity. When he finished, Margaret was silent for a long moment. Her pen had stopped moving halfway through his testimony. "Mr. Mitchell, do you understand what you are doing? You are not just testifying against your father, you are potentially exposing yourself to civil liability. You participated in these activities for years. Even if you claim you were coerced, that is a difficult defense." Jake nodded. His face was pale but resolved. "I know. I do not care anymore. Whatever happens to me, I deserve it. Clara does not. She never did." Margaret laid out the options with the clinical precision of someone who had navigated family wars before. We could file a civil suit to contest the original will execution. We could report the forgeries to the state licensing board. We could go to the police with our suspicions about my mother's death, or we could do something else. "Your father's company is his identity," Margaret said. "His reputation is his armor. The most effective way to defeat someone like him is not through the courts. Not directly, it is through the market. Build something that proves him wrong. Succeed so publicly that he cannot ignore you. And then, when he attacks, because he will attack, use everything you have to destroy his credibility completely. You are suggesting we wait? I am suggesting we prepare. There is a difference. Patience is not passivity. It is strategy." Jake's phone buzzed as we left Margaret's office. He looked at the screen and went pale. "The board meeting. It just ended. What happened?" He showed me his phone. A company-wide email from Robert Mitchell. I read it with growing disbelief. Mitchell and Associates was restructuring, effective immediately. In the interest of professional development and family succession planning, Ryan Mitchell was being promoted to Chief Operating Officer. Jake Mitchell was being moved to a senior advisory role with reduced responsibilities, and Clara Mitchell's name had been officially removed from all company records, like I had never existed. Like 6 years of my life had been erased with a single keystroke. But that was not the worst part. At the bottom of the email was an announcement that made my blood run cold. Mitchell and Associates is proud to announce the acquisition of Walker Property Group, expanding our portfolio to include mid-market commercial properties throughout the region. Mid-market properties. The exact niche Tom and Sarah had identified for my new company, the exact space I was planning to enter with Mitchell Property Solutions. My father was not just trying to destroy me, he was trying to occupy every inch of ground I might escape to. He was burning the lifeboats before I could reach them. Jake looked at me with something like fear in his eyes. He knows. Somehow he knows what you are planning. Someone told him. I thought about everyone who knew my plans. Tom, Sarah, Patricia, Eleanor, Jake, the lawyer, Linda. Someone in that circle was not who they seemed. I drove home in silence, Jake following in his own car at my request. My mind raced through possibilities. Who had access to my plans? Who knew enough to tell my father exactly how to counter me? Tom had brought me into this. He had called me before I even knew something was wrong. Could he be playing both sides? Sarah had appeared at exactly the right moment, with exactly the right resources. Too perfect, too convenient. Patricia had been hiding for 8 years. She had every reason to be bitter, every reason to make a deal with the enemy if it meant finally coming out of the shadows. Even Jake, showing up at my door with flowers and tears. What if it was all an elaborate performance? My phone buzzed. A text from a number I did not recognize. Different from the threatening messages before. Different from Linda's number. Different from anyone in my contacts. Check your email, now. I pulled over to the side of the road, opened my inbox, and found a message that had been sent to my old work email, the one I no longer had access to since being erased from the company. It had been forwarded by someone inside Mitchell and Associates, someone who wanted me to see it. The email was from Ryan to my father, sent 2 hours before the board meeting. Dad, confirmed. The source is solid. She is planning to start a mid-market property management company. She has financial backing from Sarah Chen and evidence-gathering help from Patricia Holloway. She has also been meeting with Jake. He told her about the storage unit and warned her we were coming. He has turned. Recommend we accelerate the Walker acquisition and begin discrediting campaign immediately. Also recommend we deal with the Jake situation before he does more damage. One more thing. Eleanor is in town. She visited Clara this morning. We need to discuss how to handle Mother. She is becoming a liability. Handle Mother. Like my grandmother was a problem to be solved. Like an 83-year-old woman was an obstacle to be removed. I stared at the email, my brother's words burning into my retinas. Ryan knew everything, every plan, every ally, every move I had made. And then I saw the final line, the one that made my stomach drop. Source will continue providing updates. Payment transferred as agreed. Someone I trusted was being paid to betray me. Someone in my circle was feeding my father information in exchange for money. And I had no idea who it was. I sat in my car on the side of that empty road, watching the sun set, holding proof that my family's reach extended further than I had ever imagined. One of my allies was a traitor. And until I figured out who, every plan I made would be delivered straight to my enemy. The game had just gotten far more dangerous, and I was running out of people I could trust. I did not sleep that night. Instead, I sat at my kitchen table with a legal pad and wrote down every name, every person who knew my plans, every potential source of the leak that had delivered my strategy directly into my father's hands. Tom Reeves, the headhunter who had started everything, who had called me 3 days before I even knew something was wrong, who had connections I could not verify and motives I could not fully understand. Sarah Chen, the mentor who had appeared at exactly the right moment with exactly the right resources. Too perfect, too convenient, too good to be true. Patricia Holloway, the woman who had been hiding for 8 years, who had every reason to make a deal with the enemy if it meant finally emerging from the shadows. Who knew my father's secrets better than anyone? Eleanor, my own grandmother, who had been silent for 11 years and suddenly reappeared with evidence at the exact moment I needed it most, who had access to information no one else should have. Linda, the accountant who had risked everything to help me, or claimed to, who had started all of this with a payroll report left on a copy machine. Jake, my brother, who might have been playing me from the very beginning, whose tears and trembling hands could have been nothing more than a performance designed to earn my trust. 6 names. 6 people I had trusted with my future. One of them was being paid to destroy me. And the worst part was that I had no idea which one. Every interaction, every conversation, every moment of connection now felt tainted. Had any of it been real? Or had I been a puppet dancing on strings I could not see? I needed a test. Something that would reveal the leak without alerting the mole that I was hunting. The next morning, I called an emergency meeting. Everyone, Tom, Sarah, Patricia, Eleanor, Jake, even Linda, who had supposedly delayed her departure for Oregon to help me through the crisis. We gathered in the conference room at Sarah's office, 6 faces around the table, 6 potential traitors. I studied each one as I prepared to set my trap. I need to tell you all something, I said, keeping my voice steady despite the suspicion churning in my gut. I have made a decision about the company. I laid out a completely fabricated plan, a different strategy than anything we had discussed before. I told them I was abandoning the mid-market approach entirely. Instead, I was going to focus on luxury properties on the North Shore, a completely different market, a completely different threat profile. But here is the key. I watched their reactions carefully, looking for any sign of guilt or recognition. I am telling each of you something slightly different about the timeline, a small detail that only you will know. If that detail reaches my father, I will know exactly who the leak is. I did not actually give them different information. The announcement was identical for everyone. But I wanted to see who flinched, who looked uncomfortable, who could not meet my eyes. Tom nodded approvingly, like a mentor proud of a student who had learned to think strategically. Sarah's expression remained neutral, unreadable, professional. Patricia's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly, a reaction I could not interpret. Eleanor watched me with something like admiration in her aged eyes. Jake stared at the table, pale and silent, his hands clasped so tightly his knuckles had gone white. And Linda's hands were trembling, the same way they had trembled in the church parking lot, the same way they trembled every time she was near me. "Now we wait," I said. 48 hours. If my father adjusts his strategy to counter the North Shore move, we will know he has someone in this room. The answer came faster than I expected. Not from my father's actions. From a phone call at 2 a.m, 26 hours after the meeting. Linda. Crying so hard I could barely understand her words. "Clara, I need to see you, please. I have to tell you something before it is too late." We met at a diner this time. Bright lights, public space, witnesses everywhere. Linda looked like she had aged 10 years since our first meeting in the church parking lot. Dark circles under her eyes, hair uncombed, hands shaking so badly she could not hold her coffee cup. "It is me," she whispered across the table. "I am the one. I have been feeding information to Ryan." I felt the words like a physical blow. Linda, the woman who had started all of this, the woman who had given me the evidence, the woman who had claimed to be honoring my mother's memory with every risk she took. Why? The question hung between us. Simple, devastating, demanding an answer that could justify the unjustifiable. Linda's story came out in fragments, broken sentences, tears that would not stop. Her daughter, 17 years old, brilliant, accepted to a prestigious university on the East Coast, the kind of school that could change a life, the kind of tuition that was beyond anything a senior accountant could afford. Ryan discovered this, found the acceptance letter somehow, and he offered Linda a deal. Information in exchange for her daughter's future. I thought I could control it. Linda's voice cracked with each word. "I thought I could give them just enough to seem useful while still helping you. I did not know they would use it to destroy everything. I did not know they would go this far. You gave them my plans, my timeline, my allies. Every move I made was delivered straight to my enemy. I gave them pieces, never everything. I was trying to protect you while protecting my daughter. I know how insane that sounds. I know there is no excuse. I know what I did was unforgivable." She reached into her purse and pulled out an envelope. Inside was a check. $50,000, made out to cash. The price of my betrayal, sitting on a diner table between 2 cups of cold coffee. This is what they paid me. I have not spent any of it. I was going to give it back. I was going to tell you everything and beg for your forgiveness. She paused, wiped her eyes, and then said the words that changed everything. But then I found something else. Something I only discovered 2 days ago. Something that scared me so badly I could not wait any longer. She slid a piece of paper across the table. A document printed on official letterhead. A life insurance policy. On me, taken out by my father 3 weeks ago, for $2 million. I stared at the document. My name, my date of birth, my father's signature as the policyholder. $2 million payable upon my death. "Clara, I do not think they just want to ruin you anymore." Linda's voice was barely audible. "I think they want you gone. Permanently." I sat in that brightly lit diner, surrounded by strangers eating pancakes and drinking coffee like it was any other night, and felt the last pieces of my illusions crumble away. My father was not just trying to destroy my career. He was not just trying to take back the evidence I had gathered. He was preparing for something unthinkable. "What are you going to do?" Linda asked, her eyes red and swollen. "To me?" I looked at the woman across from me, the woman who had betrayed me, the woman who had done it for her daughter, the woman who had just handed me evidence that might save my life. My mother, I said slowly, once told me that people are rarely all good or all bad. She said the measure of a person is not whether they make mistakes. It is what they do when they realize they have made them. Linda stared at me, waiting for the verdict, waiting for the punishment she knew she deserved. You are going to help me. Not as a double agent, not feeding information to both sides. You are going to come clean to everyone. Tomorrow. You are going to tell them exactly what you told me. And then you are going to help me use what you know against them. They will destroy me. They will take back the money. My daughter's future will be gone. I will help your daughter. Sarah's foundation has scholarship programs. We will find a way. I leaned forward, holding her gaze. But you have to choose, Linda. Right now. Whose side are you really on? Finally. Completely. Linda wiped her tears. Something shifted in her expression. Fear giving way to resolve. The look of someone who had finally decided to stop running. Yours. I am on yours. I should have been from the very beginning. The next morning we gathered again. Same conference room, same faces. But this time, Linda stood at the front, her voice steady despite everything she was about to confess. She told them everything. The payments from Ryan, the information she had shared, the pressure he had applied using her daughter's future as leverage, and the life insurance policy that suggested my father's plans had escalated beyond corporate warfare. When she finished, the silence in the room was suffocating. Jake spoke first, his voice hollow. A life insurance policy. On Clara. Dad actually planned to... He could not finish the sentence. Could not say the words out loud. Eleanor's face had gone pale. My son. My own son. Sarah remained calm, but her eyes had hardened. This changes the legal calculation significantly. If we can prove intent, if we can show a pattern of behavior leading to potential harm, we are no longer talking about estate disputes. We are talking about criminal conspiracy. Patricia stood slowly. Her face was cold, the face of someone who had spent 8 years waiting for this moment. I have a contact at the FBI, someone who investigated white-collar crime before moving to the Violent Crimes Division. If Robert Mitchell is planning what this evidence suggests, she needs to know. Tonight. The group reformed around a new strategy. Building my company was still the goal, but protection had to come first. Sarah arranged for private security, a 2-person team that would shadow me until this was resolved. Patricia made her call to the FBI. Eleanor, despite her age, insisted on returning to her son's house. I will watch him, she said. He will not suspect his own mother, and if he is planning something, I will know before he can act. Tom coordinated with Margaret Chen, the lawyer. We needed to accelerate the legal timeline. Get the original will into probate court, force my father to respond to legal challenges so aggressive he would not have time to execute any darker plans. And me, I would launch Mitchell Property Solutions anyway, in public, loudly, visibly. Because Sarah was right. The most protected position was the most visible one. 1 week later, I stood outside a small office building on Madison Avenue. Not the fanciest address in the city, not the biggest space, but mine. Every square foot was mine. Mitchell Property Solutions was officially open for business. The press release went out that morning. Trade publications, industry newsletters, local business journals. Clara Mitchell, former operations director of Mitchell and Associates, launching her own commercial property management firm focused on the underserved mid-market sector. The phone started ringing almost immediately. Former clients who had always preferred working with me. Industry contacts who respected my work. 3 new prospects I had never met, all referred by Sarah's network of women who helped other women succeed. By noon, I had my first signed contract. A small office complex in the suburbs. Nothing compared to the accounts I had managed at my father's company. But it was mine, built by me, on my terms. I was celebrating with Tom and Sarah when my phone rang. A number I knew too well. A number I had not expected to see. Dad. I almost did not answer, but something made me pick up. Some need to hear what he would say now that everything had changed. Congratulations on your little venture. His voice was ice, cold and sharp and completely devoid of the warmth he had once pretended to have. I saw the press release. Very impressive, very brave. Thank you. Is that all? No, I am calling to give you one last chance, Clara. Come home. Accept a position at the company. A real position. We can put all of this unpleasantness behind us. I will even tear up that document Ryan was foolish enough to create. The life insurance policy? Silence on the line. A pause that lasted 3 heartbeats too long. Then his voice, somehow even colder than before. So you know about that. Linda really has outlived her usefulness. Is that a threat, Dad? Against Linda? Against me? His laugh was cold, unfamiliar. The laugh of a stranger wearing my father's voice. I do not make threats, Clara. I make arrangements. You have until the shareholders' meeting next Friday to accept my offer. After that, he paused. After that, I will have to make different arrangements. He hung up before I could respond. I stood in my new office, phone in hand, staring at the business I had just built. My father had given me 8 days. 8 days until the shareholders' meeting. 8 days before he did whatever he was planning. 8 days to destroy him first. I converted my apartment into a war room on day 1. Whiteboards covered every available wall space. Timelines, names, connections, evidence organized by category and cross-referenced by date. 8 days until the shareholders' meeting. 8 days to build a case strong enough to destroy my father before he could destroy me. The team rotated through in shifts, working around the clock. Tom handled business development for Mitchell Property Solutions, bringing in new clients to make my company too visible to quietly eliminate. Patricia coordinated with her FBI contact, building the criminal case piece by piece. Sarah managed the legal strategy with Margaret Chen, preparing motions and filings that would force my father to respond on multiple fronts simultaneously. Jake fed information from inside Mitchell and Associates, reporting on every meeting, every conversation, every decision my father made. And Eleanor, brave 83-year-old Eleanor, had moved back into her son's house to watch his movements and listen for any sign of what he was planning. I kept the life insurance policy pinned above my desk. $2 million. That was what my life was worth to my father. Not as a daughter, not as family, as a payout. Every time I felt tired, every time the weight of what we were doing pressed down on me and made me want to give up, I looked at that document. It reminded me what I was fighting for. Not money, not the company, not even justice. Survival. Day 1 was about preparation, organizing the evidence we had gathered, making copies of everything critical, ensuring that every document was backed up in 3 different locations that my father could never access. If something happened to me, the truth would still come out. That was the promise I made to myself. That was the insurance policy that actually mattered. Day 2 brought Patricia's FBI contact to a secure location outside the city. Agent Diane Torres was a 15-year veteran of the Bureau, specializing in financial crimes that turned violent. She had seen cases like this before. Powerful men who believed they were above consequences, men who escalated from fraud to threats to actions no one wanted to name. The life insurance policy alone is not enough, Torres explained as she reviewed the documents we had compiled. It is suggestive, but not conclusive. Plenty of people take out policies on family members for legitimate estate planning reasons. We need more. Pattern of behavior, statements of intent, witnesses who can testify to his state of mind. What about Patricia Holloway? I gestured toward Patricia, who sat silently in the corner. He made her disappear 8 years ago, destroyed her career, threatened her until she went into hiding. Torres nodded slowly. That helps establish pattern. But we need something more recent, something that shows escalation. She paused, her eyes meeting mine with uncomfortable directness. What about your mother's death?" The room went silent. Eleanor, who had insisted on attending despite the risk of being seen, gripped the arms of her chair until her knuckles went white. "What are you suggesting?" "I am suggesting we request the autopsy files. The original police report. Any medical records from the weeks before her death. If there was anything irregular, anything that was overlooked or deliberately ignored, it could change everything. It could transform this from a civil dispute into a murder investigation." Eleanor spoke for the first time since we had arrived. Her voice was steady but heavy with grief that had never fully healed. "Margaret called me the night before she died. She was afraid. She said Robert had been acting strangely, cold, distant, calculating in ways she had never seen before. She said he had asked her strange questions about her life insurance policy, about what would happen to the company if something happened to her, about which documents would need to be updated." Eleanor's eyes met Agent Torres's with fierce determination. "I have carried that conversation for 11 years. I will testify to every word under oath." Day 4 brought the breakthrough. Eleanor called at 6 in the morning, her voice urgent but controlled. "I found something. In Robert's study. He keeps a locked drawer in his desk. I remembered where he hides the spare key, a habit unchanged in 40 years. You need to see what is inside." I drove to the house where I had grown up, the house that now felt like enemy territory. Eleanor met me at the back entrance, leading me through the kitchen where I had eaten breakfast every morning as a child, past the living room where we had opened Christmas presents as a family, into the study that had always been my father's private domain. The drawer contained files he thought no one would ever see, medical records from the months before my mother died, correspondence with a doctor I had never heard of, a specialist in what the letters called discrete pharmaceutical solutions. The doctor had declined to help, citing ethical concerns that apparently still existed in some corners of the medical profession. But the inquiry itself was damning. The questions my father had asked, the options he had explored. He was planning it. I held the documents with hands that would not stop shaking. He was actually planning to kill her. There is more. Eleanor pulled out another file. Bank statements showing a $50,000 payment to an unnamed recipient 2 weeks before Margaret's death, and a second payment of the same amount 1 week after. "The coroner," Eleanor said quietly, "the one who ruled her death natural causes. He retired 6 months after the funeral, bought a house in Florida, paid cash, no mortgage. No explanation for where a county medical examiner got that kind of money." I sat in my father's chair, surrounded by evidence of his darkest crime. My mother had not died of natural causes. She had been murdered by the man who had sworn to love and protect her. The man who had tucked me into bed as a child. The man who had walked me to my first day of kindergarten. My father. I always thought I had already lost everything. My job, my family, my faith in the people who should have loved me most. But sitting in that study, holding proof that my father had murdered my mother, I realized I had been wrong. There was always more to lose. There was always a deeper bottom to fall through. Day 5, Margaret Chen filed the lawsuit. A civil action contesting the execution of Margaret Mitchell's estate, alleging fraud, forgery, and undue influence, naming Robert Mitchell, Jake Mitchell, and Ryan Mitchell as defendants. Jake had agreed to be named. It was part of the strategy. A defendant who cooperated, who testified against the others, who demonstrated genuine remorse. Margaret called it fracturing the family defense, showing the court and the public that not everyone in the Mitchell family stood behind Robert's lies. The lawsuit was public record. Within hours, reporters were calling, industry journalists who covered commercial real estate, local news outlets looking for drama, national business publications that smelled blood in the water. I declined all interview requests, but the story spread anyway. Mitchell family empire faces legal challenge. Daughter accuses father of estate fraud. The headlines wrote themselves. "We did not file to win in court," Sarah explained as we monitored the coverage. "Not yet, anyway. We filed to create visibility." Your father cannot quietly eliminate someone who is at the center of a public legal battle. Every reporter, every journalist, every curious observer becomes a witness to your existence. Attention is your armor now, Clara. Not lawyers, not evidence, visibility. My father's response came within hours, not to me directly, to the press. A statement calling the lawsuit a desperate and baseless attack by a disgruntled former employee, promising a vigorous defense of the Mitchell family's reputation and legacy. Disgruntled former employee, not daughter, not family. He was already erasing me from the narrative, preparing the public for whatever came next. That evening, I received a letter from his lawyers. A cease and desist demanding I stop using the Mitchell name in my business. Stop claiming any connection to Mitchell and Associates. Stop spreading what they called defamatory allegations about the Mitchell family. I framed it and hung it next to the life insurance policy. Another reminder of what I was fighting against. Day 6 brought the autopsy files. Agent Torres had obtained them through official channels, citing the new evidence we had gathered. What she found confirmed our worst suspicions. The original coroner had noted slight irregularities in my mother's blood work, markers that could have indicated the presence of certain medications. But he had attributed them to her existing heart condition and recommended no further investigation. Case closed, body cremated, evidence destroyed. With what we have now, Torres said, I can request an exhumation order. If there are any remains, any tissue samples that were preserved, a modern forensic analysis might find what the original autopsy missed. How long will that take? Weeks, maybe months. The legal process for exhumation is complicated, especially when the family is likely to contest it. Certainly longer than 8 days. I understood what she was telling me. The criminal case would take time we did not have. The shareholders' meeting was in 2 days. Whatever happened there would determine whether I survived long enough for justice to take its course. Day 7 we gathered for what felt like a council of war. Everyone around the table, every ally I had left, every person I had chosen to trust, despite the risks. We had 2 options. Wait for the criminal investigation to build, stay protected, stay visible, let the legal process work at its own pace while we grew Mitchell Property Solutions into something too successful to ignore, or strike first. Go to the shareholders' meeting, confront my father publicly with everything we had gathered, force his hand before he could make his move. Patricia spoke first. If we wait, he controls the timeline. He will find a way around the visibility, around the legal protection. Men like him always do. They have money and connections and no conscience. They find ways. Eleanor nodded, her aged face set with determination. My son is most dangerous when he feels cornered, but he is also most likely to make mistakes. If we confront him publicly, in front of the shareholders and board members, he will not be able to control his reaction. He will reveal himself. Sarah looked at me with steady eyes. This is your call, Clara. Your life, your risk. We can advise, but we cannot decide for you. I thought about my mother, about the letter she had written that I had never received, about all the years stolen by lies and manipulation and murder. We go to the meeting, I said, all of us, and we end this. Day 8 dawned clear and cold. I woke before sunrise, unable to sleep, watching the light slowly fill my apartment. The shareholders' meeting was scheduled for 2 in the afternoon. In 8 hours, everything would change. One way or another. I dressed carefully, professionally. The navy suit my mother had bought me for my first job interview, still fitting perfectly after all these years. I had saved it for a moment that mattered. This mattered more than anything. We gathered at Sarah's office at noon. Tom, Patricia, Eleanor, Jake, Linda, Margaret Chen, even Agent Torres, who would be watching from outside, ready to move if things went wrong. I looked at each face. People who had risked everything to help me. People my mother had trusted. People who believed in justice even when it seemed impossible. Whatever happens today, I said, thank you. All of you. We were about to leave for the meeting when Jake's phone rang. He answered, listened for 30 seconds, and went completely white. That was my contact at the office. He looked at me with something like fear. Dad changed the meeting. It is not at company headquarters anymore. He moved it to the house. The family house, private property, no press allowed, no outside observers. Just shareholders and invited guests. He knows we are coming, Patricia said. He is isolating us, Sarah added, getting us away from witnesses. I looked at the evidence we had gathered, at the plan we had made. All of it based on the assumption that we would have a public stage, an audience, protection through visibility. Now we had nothing but a house full of people who wanted me gone, and a father who had already killed once to protect his secrets. We go anyway, I said, but we go prepared. I reached into my bag and pulled out my phone, hit the record button, and left it recording. If I do not make it out of that house, I said, looking into the camera, this is why, this is who, and this is everything they have done. I spent the next few minutes summarizing everything. The salary discrimination, the forged will, the evidence of murder, the life insurance policy, names, dates, documents. All of it recorded and automatically uploading to a secure cloud server that 3 different lawyers had access to. When I finished, I put the phone in my jacket pocket with the camera still running. 3 hours later, I walked through the front door of my childhood home. Into the living room where I had played as a little girl. Into the dining room where we had shared family meals. Into the den where my father was waiting with a smile that told me he had been planning this moment for a very long time. The house looked the same as it always had. White columns standing sentinel on either side of the front door. Manicured lawn stretching toward the street in perfect geometric precision. The oak tree I had climbed as a child still standing in the front yard, its branches reaching toward a sky that seemed impossibly blue for such a dark day. But everything felt different now. The home where I had learned to walk, where I had celebrated birthdays and opened Christmas presents, where I had been held by a mother who loved me, had become a trap, and I was walking into it willingly. My team flanked me as we approached. Tom on my left, Patricia on my right, Sarah and Margaret Chen behind us. Jake had gone in earlier to maintain his cover until the last possible moment. Eleanor was already inside, playing the role of confused elderly mother who just wanted peace in her family. Linda waited in a car parked down the street, ready to call Agent Torres if anything went wrong. I noticed the security guards first, 2 men in dark suits stationed at the front door, their eyes tracking our approach with professional detachment. 2 more visible through the windows, positioned at strategic points throughout the first floor. My father had never employed security at the house before. These men were not here to protect the family. They were here to contain it, to make sure no one left until my father decided they could. I straightened my shoulders, touched the phone in my jacket pocket, still recording, still uploading everything to the secure server. And I walked through the front door of my childhood home for what might be the last time. The shareholders' meeting had been set up in the formal dining room. The long mahogany table that had hosted Thanksgiving dinners and Christmas Eve celebrations, now surrounded by shareholders, lawyers, and family members who looked at me like I was a stranger who had wandered in from the street. My father sat at the head of the table. Robert Mitchell, 71 years old. Silver hair perfectly combed, blue eyes cold as winter ice. He smiled when I entered, and the warmth of that smile made my skin crawl. It was the smile of a predator who had cornered his prey and wanted to savor the moment before the kill. "Clara, how nice of you to join us. I was not sure you would come. I would not miss this for the world, Dad." Ryan sat to our father's right, his posture radiating smug confidence. The enforcer who had sent threatening texts and hunted me through storage facilities. He did not even pretend to be civil, his lip curling slightly as his eyes met mine. Jake sat to our father's left, pale and nervous, playing his role perfectly. The conflicted son who had not yet revealed his betrayal. Eleanor sat at the far end of the table, watching everything with sharp eyes hidden behind a mask of elderly confusion. And around them sat the shareholders, 6 people who owned small percentages of Mitchell and Associates, people who had invested in the company years ago and trusted my father to manage their money responsibly, people who had no idea what this family had become. I scanned the faces around the table and noticed something strange. One chair was empty. Gerald Hoffman, who had owned 8% of the company since before I was born, was not present. No one had mentioned his absence. No one seemed concerned. In a room full of traps, every missing piece mattered. My father called the meeting to order with the practiced ease of someone who had run 1,000 such gatherings. Standard business first. Quarterly financial reports showing steady growth, projections for the coming year. The successful acquisition of Walker Property Group. All designed to project normalcy, stability, a family business running smoothly despite what he called the unfortunate public dispute with a former employee. I waited. Let him have his performance. Let him believe he was in control. My moment was coming. When he asked if there was any new business to discuss, I stood. Actually, yes, I have some new business. I would like to present evidence of fraud, forgery, and murder committed by the CEO of this company. The room went silent. The shareholders exchanged confused glances. Ryan's confident smirk flickered. Eleanor gripped the edge of the table. And my father's smile did not waver. If anything, it grew wider. Clara, this is not the appropriate venue for your personal grievances. I disagree. The shareholders deserve to know who they have invested their money with. I pulled copies of the documents from my bag and spread them across the table. The original will, showing equal ownership shares for all 3 children. Financial records showing forged signatures on client accounts. Internal correspondence about cover-ups and settlements. The medical records showing my father's inquiries about untraceable medications. The bank statements showing payments to the coroner who had ruled my mother's death natural causes. 11 years ago, Margaret Mitchell intended to leave 30% of this company to each of her children. Robert Mitchell destroyed that will and replaced it with one that served his interests. He forged signatures. He covered up his son's incompetence by using my name and reputation as insurance. And when my mother threatened to expose him, he murdered her. The shareholders were frozen in their seats. Ryan had gone pale beneath his artificial tan. Eleanor was no longer pretending confusion, her eyes fixed on her son with something between grief and fury. And Robert Mitchell was still smiling. That was what terrified me most. He should have been panicking, should have been denying, should have been doing something other than sitting there with that calm, confident expression, like a man who had been waiting for exactly this moment. "Are you finished?" he asked, when the silence had stretched past bearable. "Because I have evidence, too." He nodded to Ryan, who produced his own folder of documents. Photographs, legal papers, what appeared to be transcripts of recorded conversations. My daughter has been conspiring with disgruntled former employees to fabricate evidence against this company. My father's voice carried the practiced sincerity of a man who had spent his life lying to people who trusted him. She has been working with Patricia Holloway, a woman who was terminated for theft 8 years ago. She has been coordinating with Linda Morrison, an accountant we recently discovered has been embezzling company funds. And she has manipulated my own mother, using forged documents and emotional manipulation to turn her against her own son. Every accusation was a twisted version of the truth. Patricia had not been fired for theft. Linda had not embezzled anything. Eleanor had not been manipulated, but the shareholders did not know that. They only saw 2 sets of competing claims, 2 versions of reality, and no way to determine which was true. "This is what Clara does," my father continued, his voice heavy with practiced sorrow. "She has always been troubled. Jealous of her brothers, resentful of authority. We tried to help her, gave her a position at the company despite her limitations. And this is how she repays our generosity. With lies, with slander, with attacks on the family that loved her." The room had descended into confusion. shareholders whispering to each other, lawyers scribbling notes, my father's narrative gaining traction against my evidence because he had decades of trust to draw on, and I had only the truth. Then Jake stood up. "Dad, stop." Robert turned to his eldest son with a look of confident expectation. The look of a father who assumed his child would fall in line, as Jake had always fallen in line, as all of us had always fallen in line. "Jake, please explain to these people that your sister has been having some sort of breakdown, and we are trying to help her. I am not going to lie for you anymore." The look on my father's face was something I would remember forever. Confusion first, then recognition, then fury so pure and hot, it seemed to change the temperature of the room. "What did you say?" "I said I am not going to lie for you. Not anymore. Not ever again." Jake's voice grew stronger as he spoke, like someone breaking through a wall that had contained him his entire life. "Everything Clara said is true. I have known about the salary disparities for years. I watched you forge signatures on documents. I saw you destroy Mom's original will 3 days after her funeral. I was too afraid to say anything then, too afraid of losing your approval, too afraid of what you might do to me if I stepped out of line. But I am not afraid anymore. I will testify to everything I have witnessed, under oath, in any court that will hear me." Before my father could respond, Eleanor rose from her chair, slowly, leaning on her cane. But her voice, when it came, was stronger than I had ever heard it. "I have been silent for too long, afraid of my own son, afraid of what he had become, afraid that speaking the truth would destroy what was left of this family." She looked around the table at the shareholders, at the lawyers, at the children and grandchildren who had gathered in this room. "But there is no family left to destroy. Robert has seen to that. He murdered my daughter-in-law. He stole from his own children. He has threatened and intimidated anyone who tried to expose him. And I will spend whatever years I have left making sure he faces justice." My father looked from Jake to Eleanor to me, his family, his blood, all aligned against him. For one moment I saw something I had never seen in his eyes. Fear. Real fear. The fear of a man who had spent his life controlling everyone around him and suddenly realized that control was slipping away. Then, something changed in his expression. The fear vanished, replaced by something colder, more dangerous. The look of a man who had decided that if he was going down, he was taking everyone with him. Security. The 2 guards who had been standing by the door moved forward, not threatening, not aggressive, just present, a reminder that we were in his house, surrounded by his people, far from any help. "No one leaves this room until I say so." He stood slowly, walked to the sideboard where a crystal decanter of whiskey sat, poured himself a glass with hands that were perfectly steady. "You think you have won." He took a long drink, then turned to face us. "You think your evidence matters, your testimonies, your righteous indignation. But you have forgotten something important. This is my house, my company, my family, and I decide how this ends." He reached into his jacket. My heart stopped, but it was not a weapon. It was a phone. "I have a contact at the district attorney's office, a friend who owes me more favors than he can count. In about 10 minutes, police will arrive to arrest Patricia Holloway for theft, Linda Morrison for embezzlement, and Clara Mitchell for conspiracy to commit fraud. The evidence has already been prepared. The warrants have already been signed." My stomach dropped. He had planned for this, had known I would come, had prepared a counterstrike that would destroy my credibility, my freedom, my future. "You can fight it," he continued. "Hire lawyers. Prove your innocence eventually. Maybe in a year or 2, after your little company has gone bankrupt and your reputation has been destroyed, some court might believe your version of events, but by then it will not matter. No one will trust a word you say about me." He smiled, the smile of a man who had already won. "Or you can accept my offer. Walk away. Take a settlement. Leave quietly, and I will make all of this disappear. Your choice, Clara. But you have about 9 minutes to make it." I looked at my father, at the man who had controlled my entire life, who had killed my mother, who had systematically destroyed anyone who threatened his power. And I smiled back. "You are right, Dad. You have thought of everything. Except one thing." I pulled out my phone, hit stop on the recording that had been running since before I walked through the front door, and held it up for everyone in the room to see. "This has been recording since I arrived. Every word you have said, every threat you have made, every admission. And it has been uploading in real time to a secure server that 3 different lawyers have access to." My father's face went gray. "If I am arrested, that recording goes public. If Patricia is arrested, it goes public. If anything happens to anyone in this room, it goes public." "And Dad, I sent a copy to Agent Diane Torres of the FBI about 20 minutes ago. She has been listening live this entire time." The front door burst open. Agent Torres, followed by 6 federal agents in tactical vests, swept into the dining room with practiced efficiency. "Robert Mitchell," Torres announced, "you are under arrest for conspiracy to commit murder, fraud, and obstruction of justice. You have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law." My father looked at me as they put him in handcuffs, and for the first time in my life, I saw him clearly. Not as my father. Not as a powerful businessman, not as the man who had built an empire and controlled everyone around him. Just a small, desperate man who had spent his entire life building a legacy on lies. "This is not over," he said as they led him away. "This will never be over." "Yes, Dad," I said quietly. "It is." But as I watched them take him out the door, Ryan caught my eye from across the room. He had not been arrested, had not been named in the charges Torres had read, and the look on his face, cold and calculating and completely unafraid, told me my father was right about one thing. This was not over. Not yet. Not until every last secret was exposed. Every last debt was paid. And every last person who had wronged me faced their reckoning. I woke the next morning to 17 missed calls, 43 text messages, and my face on the front page of the business section. Mitchell family empire crumbles. Patriarch arrested for murder conspiracy. The headlines screamed what I had lived through, reducing the worst day of my life to ink and paper and clickbait. I made coffee, sat by my window, watched the sun rise over a city that suddenly looked different. Brighter somehow, full of possibility instead of threat. My father was in federal custody. His bail hearing was scheduled for the following week, but Agent Torres had assured me that with the evidence we had gathered, flight risk concerns would keep him locked up. For the first time in months, I felt safe. For the first time in years, I felt free. I had imagined this moment so many times. The moment when justice finally came. When the man who had stolen my inheritance, murdered my mother, and tried to destroy my life finally faced consequences. I thought I would feel triumphant, victorious, like a warrior who had won an impossible battle. Instead, I felt something I had not expected. Grief. Not for my father, not for the man he had become, but for the father I thought I had, for the family I thought I belonged to, for the little girl who had believed her daddy would always protect her. That little girl had died in this process, and I was only now beginning to mourn her. The calls came throughout the morning, Tom checking in, Sarah offering support. Patricia simply saying she was proud of me. The network my mother had built was still holding me up even now, especially now. Ryan disappeared the night of the arrest, fled before the FBI could question him, slipping away in the chaos while agents were focused on my father. For 3 days, I wondered if he would become another threat lurking in the shadows. Another enemy waiting to strike when I least expected it. I did not have to wonder long. Agent Torres called on day 4. Ryan had been picked up trying to cross into Canada at a remote border crossing in Vermont. His laptop, seized during the arrest, contained evidence of his own crimes separate from our father's schemes. Embezzlement from client accounts. Wire fraud spanning 3 years. and communications with our father discussing how to handle Clara permanently, using language that left no room for innocent interpretation. "He is not getting bail," Torres said. "He is looking at 15 to 20 years, minimum, and that is before we add charges related to your mother's death." He was more involved than we initially realized. There was more. Torres had found emails between Ryan and a woman named Veronica Shaw, the name my grandmother had mentioned, my father's mistress, the affair that had lasted over 15 years, hidden from everyone except those who needed to know. "The affair never ended," Torres explained. "They have been together this entire time, and Veronica was helping Ryan plan what to do with the company once your father was too old to run it. They were going to push him out eventually, use the same tactics on him that he used on everyone else." I almost laughed at the irony. My father, the master manipulator, had been played by his own son and his longtime mistress. The empire he had killed to protect was going to be stolen from him anyway. All that destruction, all that pain, for nothing. "Karma," Patricia said when I told her. "It is slow sometimes, but it is thorough." With both my father and Ryan in federal custody, I could finally breathe. The threats were neutralized, the danger had passed, and the evidence gathering that Patricia had spent 8 years compiling, that Linda had risked everything to provide, that Eleanor had finally revealed after a decade of silence, it had all mattered. Every document, every recording, every act of courage had added up to this moment. Justice had come, late, imperfect, but real. 6 weeks later, the original will was finally admitted to probate court. Margaret Chen presented Eleanor's notarized copy, verified by handwriting experts, and dated after the fraudulent version my father had executed. The judge's ruling came down on a Tuesday afternoon. The original will was valid. Clara Mitchell was entitled to 30% ownership of Mitchell and Associates, plus back compensation for years of deliberate underpayment. The estate would be recalculated, restitution would be made. When Margaret Chen showed me the final numbers, I had to read them 3 times before the figures made sense. Between the ownership stake, the back pay, the damages for fraud, and the settlement from the company's liability insurance, I was entitled to just over $4.7 million. $4.7 million. For 6 years I had earned $42,000 while my brothers collected twice that. For 6 years I had been told I was temporary, disposable, worth less than the men who did half my work. Now the scales were finally balanced, but I did not want Mitchell and Associates. The company was tainted, built on my mother's stolen inheritance, and maintained through fraud and manipulation and murder. I sold my shares to an outside investor, a woman Sarah introduced me to who specialized in turning around troubled companies and implementing ethical business practices. The money went into Mitchell Property Solutions, into hiring the best people I could find, into building something clean and honest. Something that bore my family name, but represented everything my father was not. "Your mother would be proud," Eleanor told me at the closing. "This is exactly what she wanted for you. Not revenge, not destruction. Creation. Building something beautiful from the ashes of something broken." The hardest relationship to navigate in the aftermath was Jake. My brother had testified against our father, had risked everything to stand with me when it mattered most. But he had also spent 11 years participating in my erasure, watching me be underpaid and undervalued, saying nothing while I was used as insurance against his own incompetence. We met for coffee 3 months after the arrest. Neutral ground. No expectations. Just 2 siblings trying to figure out if there was anything left to salvage. "I do not know how to do this," Jake admitted, staring into his cup like it held answers he could not find. "Be a real brother. Be someone you can trust." I never learned how. Dad never taught us to be anything except what he needed us to be. "Neither did I said. "Maybe we learn together. It would not be easy. Trust, once broken so completely, rebuilds slowly if it rebuilds at all." But Jake was trying. He had given up his share of the company settlement, donating every dollar to a foundation supporting victims of workplace discrimination. He had started therapy, working through decades of conditioning that had taught him to value approval over integrity. He had begun building a life that was actually his, not the one our father had designed for him. "I spent 32 years being who Dad wanted me to be," he told me during one of our coffee meetings. "I have no idea who I actually am. But I am going to find out." Eleanor became a regular presence in my life after everything settled. Sunday dinners at her apartment, phone calls that lasted for hours, stories about my mother that I had never heard, memories she had kept safe for 11 years waiting for the chance to share them. She moved into an assisted living community near my office, not because she needed assistance, but because she was done being alone, done being isolated by her son's lies, done waiting for a family that had been stolen from her. "I wasted 11 years being afraid of Robert," she told me one evening as we looked through old photo albums. 11 years of silence when I should have been fighting. I am not wasting whatever time I have left." Linda's daughter got her scholarship. Full tuition, room and board, a fresh start untainted by her mother's mistakes. Sarah's foundation had made it happen. No questions asked, no strings attached. Linda herself joined Mitchell Property Solutions as head of accounting. She had earned the position, not through betrayal, but through redemption, through choosing the right side when it would have been so much easier to stay silent. "Second chances," I told her on her first day. That is what we do here. 3 years after walking out of my father's office, Mitchell Property Solutions managed over $800 million in commercial real estate assets. 23 employees, every one of them compensated based on performance rather than politics. Client satisfaction scores consistently in the 99th percentile. 3 consecutive years of growth that had made us the firm to watch in the mid-market sector. The industry awards kept coming. Emerging leader, fastest growing firm, best workplace culture. Each plaque and trophy was a small revenge, a public declaration that the woman her father had called temporary was anything but. I kept a copy of that first payroll report in my desk drawer, the one Linda had left on the copy machine all those years ago. $42,000. Sometimes when the pressure got heavy or the challenges felt insurmountable, I would pull it out and look at it, not to stay angry, not to feed resentment, but to remember how far I had come. To remember that the woman who had earned $42,000 was the same woman now running a company worth millions. The only thing that had changed was who got to decide my value. My father's trial concluded 18 months after his arrest. Guilty on all counts: conspiracy to commit murder, fraud, obstruction of justice. The judge sentenced him to 25 years to life. He would die in prison. The empire he had built on lies and blood would pass to history, remembered only as a cautionary tale about the price of unchecked ambition. I did not attend the sentencing, did not need to see him one last time, did not need closure from a man who had never given me anything except pain. The closure I needed, I had built myself. Sometimes the best revenge is not getting even. Sometimes it is getting ahead and staying there. I stood at my office window on the 3-year anniversary of Mitchell Property Solutions, watching the city lights flicker to life as the sun set. 31 years old, CEO of my own company, survivor of a family that had tried to erase me. I thought about the girl I had been, the one who had worked weekends and holidays, desperate for approval that would never come, the one who had believed that if she just worked harder, sacrificed more, proved herself more thoroughly, she would finally be seen, finally be valued, finally be enough. That girl had been wrong, not about her worth, but about who got to define it. The people who should love us most are sometimes the ones who hurt us deepest. They are the ones who know exactly where we are vulnerable, exactly how to make us feel small. And the hardest thing in the world is learning that their opinion of us does not have to become our opinion of ourselves. I had learned to walk away from people who did not value me, had learned that leaving was not giving up, it was choosing myself. It was saying, loudly and clearly, that I deserved better than crumbs from tables I had built with my own hands. And then I had gone out and built better, with my own vision, on my own terms, surrounded by people who saw my worth without me having to prove it. If my story sounds familiar to you, if you have ever felt invisible in your own family, undervalued by the people who should champion you, dismissed because of who you are rather than what you can do, I want you to know something. You are not alone, and you are not wrong for wanting more. Sometimes the people who raise us cannot see us clearly. Sometimes the families we are born into are not the families we deserve. And sometimes the bravest thing we can do is build a new life with people who actually recognize our worth. If this story gave you hope, if it made you feel less alone in whatever battle you are fighting, I would love to hear from you. Drop a comment below and tell me your story. Have you ever had to walk away from family to find yourself? Have you ever been underestimated by the people who should have believed in you the most? I read every comment, and your story matters. And if you want more stories like this, stories about finding your strength when the people closest to you try to tear you down, stories about ordinary people who faced impossible situations and found the courage to change their lives, make sure you hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. Because every week I share stories of resilience, justice, and the power of refusing to accept less than you deserve. You deserve to be seen. You deserve to be valued. And you deserve a story that reminds you of that truth every single day. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. And thank you for being part of this community. Your support means more than you know. Until next time, remember this. Sometimes the best revenge is not getting even. It is becoming someone they can never ignore again. It is building a life so full and successful and joyful that it speaks louder than any argument ever could. This has been Clara's story. But out there, right now, someone is living the first chapter of their own transformation. What will your story be? This story is fictionalized for dramatic effect.